to get set for the weekend. So much to talk about. Who will be the best defense in the Southeastern Conference in football this year? SEC basketball to preview. S&P strength of schedule out for college football. We've got Anthony Vaccaro, Montevallo head basketball coach, with an opportunity for worlds to completely collide on Sunday. We'll talk about that with him at 9:15. Only guest for today. Not many topics scheduled today, so you're welcome to get in for whatever you want. 800-239-9569. Text in 205-834-9450. Tweet into the show at Mac and Cube. Some basketball last night. UAB gets a win over FAU, 89-80. Considering FAU shot 58% from the floor, UAB still finds a way to get that win. Another double-double for Lindenborg, 12-10. And UAB gets to 20 wins on the season. 14-9 on the offensive glass for UAB. Jabari McGee, 27 points, led all scores. They'll have Tulane on the road Sunday at 1 to wrap up the regular season. We get Auburn and Alabama on the basketball court from Auburn, 1:30 tomorrow on ESPN. Going to be a big basketball weekend, G-Mac.
Big basketball weekend, final weekend of the regular season. Got to be excited about that. Conference tournaments already starting some mid-major spots. Bama-Auburn, Iron Bowl of basketball, part 2. No response. Nothing.
I don't respond
Crickets.
to that for anybody. I don't care who it is.
Why can't I press buttons this morning?
Not on that one. That one never presses any buttons. It's
Easy.
just dumb.
Come on. You love it. Deep down, you love it. But it'll be a great opportunity, I think. I loved the first time around, hated the outcome, but, man, it was fun. It was great to be the center of the basketball world. And, obviously, that'll be kind of the case again this weekend. Don't get me wrong. Duke, North Carolina is always going to move the needle. But when you get Auburn, Alabama, top 7 matchup, it's always pretty exciting as well. So looking forward to the matchup, looking forward to the game, and hopefully the tie can pull one out. But they kind of need one here. Not that it's going to affect much. I mean, the win, though, I think could potentially secure a spot on the 1 line. And I think we've talked to most folks, 1 line, big difference than being on the 2 line.
Yeah, and Auburn obviously looking for that number 1 overall seed. Lenardi has them there now, but obviously a lot more basketball today and through the weekend. Here's something that's pretty cool, though, either way. It's going to help a team that's in this state in basketball when you look kind of where they are and where the state of basketball is inside the state of Alabama. By my count right now, and I'm going to leave one out, and I know there's probably one at a level that I did not find or did not consider last night looking this up. We have 9 basketball teams with 20 wins in this state right now. 9 over 20 wins. UAH is 28-1. They'll be in the Gulf South Conference semifinals tomorrow at Samford. Auburn 27-3. UNA got to 24-9 last night. Alabama 23-7. South Alabama's 21-10. Montevallo's 20-9. UAB's 20-10. Jacksonville State and Troy are both 20-10. It's pretty impressive for a football crazy state, GMAC.
Very impressive, but also it reflects the quality of basketball that's played at the high school level in this state and the commitment. Like you don't need to be a one-trick pony. You can love basketball and football. I mean, your love for basketball doesn't take away from the love that you might have for the football team and vice versa. You can love your school and you can love your state and you can support it all throughout the year, not just throughout the fall. So I think it's great. I think it's tremendous that it started really probably 7, 8, 9 years ago. UAB's been good for a while in hoops. It's been great to see Jacksonville State make some noise here in recent years. And I think with Auburn's commitment to Bruce Pearl, that kind of forced Alabama's hand to really go all in with Nate Oates, and the results have been tremendous. So I think it's a great spot to be in. It certainly makes consuming your school throughout the year a lot more fun.
I think what it proves to me, this is just my opinion. I don't know what folks will think about it, if they like it or not. I think it proves that it's the fandom that is rabid in this state more so than just football. I think the way that we root for our schools, our teams, the places that we went to school, the places that we grew up, the teams that we love, the way that we root for them carries over.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, a lot of these teams have had some struggles. I mean, UAB went through some rough times. Auburn went through the roughest of rough times in basketball. UNA hasn't been as relevant as they are right now in basketball in quite some time. UAB's been a little bit of a roller coaster, but probably not near as much as a program like Auburn. Alabama has had mild ups and downs, but Nate's had it at a level consistently that it has not been in a long time, some might say ever. And obviously Auburn is in a stratosphere that they've never really even knocked on the door of right now under Bruce Pearl. And so I think that the football craziness has been there because the football teams a lot of the times have been good. I mean, yeah, Auburn's been a roller coaster, but the highs have been pretty high. Alabama's highs have been consistent and incredible. UAB and what Bill Clark did, it was easy to root for them a lot of the time because they were really good. I mean, Jacksonville State's got national championships. So does UNA in football. UAH has been here in basketball for a long time. Lenny Acuff had that thing rolling, had it going, and obviously put it into different hands now, but they are still a dominant force in that conference. And South Alabama has had probably some ebbs and flows, but has had some better years than some other schools. So I think it just goes to show you when the teams that we love, the schools that we love, the programs that we love that have that logo, we're going to get behind them. And some of the administrators probably looked at it and said, well, wait a minute, it's not just because the football is good, it's because they like teams at their schools that are good. And they found a way to go make this happen.
Yeah, and I also think, too, a big goal and a big priority for a lot of teams or a lot of schools, not just in this state, but anywhere else, it's been to increase out-of-state enrollment. And I think, look, when you go and some people that you're going to go after in the Northeast, maybe they lean a little more towards basketball as opposed to football. Maybe for those that you are trying to draw down from, say, Michigan, maybe they're a little bit more into basketball than they are putting on a suit and sitting in Bryant-Denny or Jordan Hare. So I think it's all in an effort to diversify the appeal that your school's trying to make for out-of-state students. And I think it's really been well received. If you look at the enrollment numbers at Alabama alone, out of the northeastern part of the United States, it's outrageous the amount of kids that are coming from that part of the world to go to Tuscaloosa. Now, let's be real. I think if you were to ask in a blind anonymous survey those students why they're considering Alabama, I think it's in large part due to the college experience that you have on fall Saturdays. But at the same time, there's probably a decent amount that want to support basketball as well. And maybe basketball might be the number one reason why they decided to go to Tuscaloosa and or Auburn and or Knoxville or wherever it may be. So I think there's a lot of things that go into supporting both programs and a lot of reasons why it's beneficial to have good teams in both sports.
Yeah, but it's been really cool to see. And then some of it, too, I think, is just style of play has been more enjoyable. You look at the way that Nate's team plays. Obviously, what Bucky McMillan does at Samford, it's just a fun team to watch. And making teams more watchable. And I don't know if, let's say, Martin Newton actually had that in mind when he brought Bucky McMillan over, other than the fact that he thought he could win games, was thinking to himself, we got to find a style of play that people can get involved with, that can enjoy watching, because whether we're good or not, let's at least make it an enjoyable watch to go out there and take in and want to go see and want to be a part of. And he's provided that for Samford fans. I mean, my son loves Samford football games or basketball games. We go over there. I'm sure he would love football games, but obviously I'm not here to take him. And what Coach Hatch does is a fun product as well. But I think that's a big part of it too, is just get a style in there that's watchable. Either really good players or a really good system scheme that people like to go watch that you can get on board with and make it easy to root for.
Well, and I think if it's fun to watch, it's probably fun to play in. I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming. I didn't play in an offense that was fun to watch to the casual consumer, but I played in an offense that was fun to watch if you loved dominance and physical superiority. So I think it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder to an extent, but also at the same time, I think there's, from a basketball standpoint especially, seeing guys run the floor is a lot more entertaining. Like I went to school during the Mark Gottfried era and then the beginning of the Anthony Grant era. And I just remember, I love Anthony Grant. He's a tremendous human being. Loved getting to know him. Loved the kind of guy he was. Just a first-class person. But watching his teams play was like watching paint dry at times. It was. And as a result, there were no big-time, high-level, super high-level basketball recruits that were possible lottery picks that were going to go play in a team in a system like that required tons of ball movement, shoot it with 4 seconds on the clock, and try to win games in the 50s. No one wants to play in that. Virginia won a championship doing it, and it's a great system. But for the most part, Virginia never won a championship until they started to actually go and get some one-and-dones and some high-level lottery pick type players. So I think it's very appealing in basketball, especially to have a consumable product, have something that's going to run the floor. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be entertaining because it's not only going to be more consumable for the fans, it's also going to be more attractive to potential recruits with where basketball's gone in recent years.
And we're going to get some big ones this weekend. Troy will be in the quarterfinals of the Sun Belt Tournament Saturday night at 8 p.m. You've also got on Sunday, I mentioned UNA and Lipscomb in the A-Sun Championship on ESPN2. First ever A-Sun title game in school history for the Lions. Lipscomb's also 24-9 on the season. Those two split in the regular season 1-1. That'll be at Allen Arena in Nashville. Have you heard of it?
I have not.
I thought it was in Kansas.
Mm.
Oh, that's the
Field House. That's the Field House.
Yes, that's the Fog.
Yes, but that is where it will be played. You'll get Kennesaw State at Jacksonville State tomorrow. Alabama State's at Grambling. Alabama A&M is at Southern. Furman and Samford will go in the SoCon quarterfinals at 7:30 tomorrow night. That's at Harris Cherokee Center in Asheville, North Carolina. Hadn't seen the tape on that one either. Sounds like a beautiful place, though. Did not know that Asheville had casinos. A lot of people tell me they like going to Asheville. It's a beautiful place. But
they got breweries.
I didn't know they like to
breweries and casino. That sounds like a
go in there and hit the slot machines. I didn't know that was a real thing.
I did not know that there were casinos there. Having lived in Charlotte for multiple years, never knew that.
They were waiting for you to leave, I guess.
That's what it was. For my own good. Didn't need to be part of all that. Never actually lived in a town with a casino. I think it'd be tempting.
You kind of do now. Birmingham Racecourse and Casino, it's in the name.
That's true. Not big on slots. Kind of more of a table game guy.
So yesterday, UNA took down Jacksonville 78-63 to get to 24-9. Shot 49% from the floor, 7-16 from three. Outscored Jacksonville 34-22 in the paint. All 5 starters in double figures. Jakari Lane, who has been great for UNA this year, 19 points. Alabama A&M goes down to Grambling. Both those teams now 10-2, 67-51 yesterday. Bulldogs 32% from the floor, just 6-22 from three. And Alabama State got a nice win against Southern, 66-65. They shot 10-22 from three. Southern just 3 of 20 from three. TJ Madlock 24 points for the Hornets. They're now 15-15, so they even it up, get to 500 on the season. It's going to be a massive weekend of college basketball. We mentioned Alabama and Auburn tomorrow, 1:30 on ESPN. Today, hoops begin at 11 a.m. on ESPN+. Big South quarterfinals, Gardner-Webb versus High Point in Johnson, Tennessee. And then the last tip of the day is going to be at 10:30 Central on ESPN+, San Diego versus Loyola in the West Coast Conference Tournament second round. Nobody really knows what round it is out there because you have 17 teams that have at least 1 or 5 buys, and no one can keep up with exactly where they are, but they are going to be in Las Vegas. So it is the West Coast Conference Tournament. Nobody just really knows how to talk about it other than second round. So we'll see how it plays out, see how it goes.
Are you excited about seeing the quad bye?
Who doesn't deserve 4 buys in one tournament?
Are you trying
Surprised the SEC and Big Ten hadn't pushed for that in football.
Wow. Shots fired.
No, I just said if you're gonna throw your weight around, let's get in there and throw some bows.
I'm not gonna push back on it. I'm fine with it. I think if you want to make it about the best teams and put some value on the regular season, give them a major bye, major head start. I'm fine with that.
There it is. All right, so there's a lot of basketball to talk about in the state. One meaningful game outside of Alabama yesterday. Michigan State took down Iowa 91-84. Michigan State obviously vying for seeding. Remember, that was the team that Joe Lenardi told us earlier in the week was the only other team that was not on the one line that he thought had a real chance to get to the one line. And it's also the 4th outright Big Ten regular season title for Tom Izzo. What comes to your mind when I say that? Because when I wrote it down last night, there was one specific thing that came into my brain. The 4th regular season Big Ten title outright for Tom Izzo.
Ooh. I mean, surprising.
That's it?
That's what I said.
Feel like he would have way more, but I don't know. I don't even, it feels like.
If you'd have asked me 4 or 14, I would have given you 14.
Really?
I just, he feels like he's been the mainstay in the Big Ten. Some have come and gone.
That's fair.
I mean, Juwan Howard came in for a minute and was pretty good.
Like they've been good in like 15 years.
Frank Kaminsky in Wisconsin were good for a couple of years, but like he feels like he's just been good for about 20 years. That's what it feels like. Now, then you go back and look at some of those tournament runs, and those were what, 9, 10 seeds that were like 17 and 15 or something like that. But I'm saying they weren't dominant basketball teams. They weren't sitting on the one line. Now, he had a couple that were really good teams, but
sure.
I think he also made a lot of noise in tournament play, not with just a great team wire to wire.
This is the best, by far, I think, the best team that Michigan State's had in a while, it feels like.
That's disrespectful to Mateen Cleaves, but okay.
How dare you talk on Morris Peterson like that?
What have they done in the last 10 years?
Won 3 other outright Big Ten titles, maybe?
In the last 10 years?
I have no idea. I mean, I can't.
I'll take the under on that. Let's see. I really am curious about it now. They have not been as good of late. Now, he was amazing in the early 2000s. Amazing. And he's made the tournament a ton. But, yeah, if you really look at it the last few years, in the Big Ten play, 10-10, 11-8, 11-9, 9-11, 14-6, no postseason due to COVID-19. He did make the Final Four in 2018-19.
Yeah, they were 32-7 that year. I mean,
they were really good. 30-5 the year before that, but then 10-8, 13-5, 12-6, 12-6, 13-5. I mean, really, it's not like they've been a dominant force and presence in the Big Ten, but I would think it's probably taken turns. I mean, Ohio State's had a couple years. Michigan's had a handful of years that they've been excellent. Wisconsin had a few years. Iowa had a couple years where they were really, really good.
Luka Garza, shout out.
Luka Garza, exactly. Totally dominant at times. There were, I feel like, a couple good Maryland teams in there. I'm sure there's one or two I'm missing, but there have been some good basketball teams in the Big Ten. I just don't feel like Michigan State's been one of them.
But I guess that's what Cole's talking about. In the last 10 years, he's had 3 Final Fours, a Sweet 16, and a couple of at least second rounds. But we view him as just okay. Yeah, he's one of the greats, but it's also like, well, what has he done? Well, he's done kind of well.
He started coaching Michigan State when I started playing football at Auburn. And he has had a
long time ago.
And he's had less than 20 wins 6 times.
Ooh, last century? Wow.
6 times total.
All right, so looking at the last handful of regular season Big Ten champions. Purdue, no surprise there.
I was about to mention Purdue and all their 7-footers that they've had in the last 10 years.
Illinois and Wisconsin in 22. Michigan in 21. Maryland, Michigan State, and Wisconsin in 20. Michigan State and Purdue in 2019. 2018, Michigan State outright by themselves. Then Purdue, Indiana, Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, 3-way tie. Ohio State, Michigan State, Ohio State, Purdue, 3-way tie. Michigan State outright in 09. And you had Wisconsin, Ohio State, Illinois, Wisconsin. Wisconsin's been dang good. Golly, I didn't realize they had this many championships.
I think before this run started, though, it was rough for a little while. But as recent memory has been really good. And, yeah, they've had, a national championship and a couple more Final Four runs? Olivia Harlan's husband and Frank Kaminsky and a couple of those guys?
Well, I'm looking up. You're talking about Wisconsin.
Correct.
Yes. I mean, Wisconsin's been legit.
Like, how good was Wisconsin pre-2010, 12-ish, around there?
Gosh. I don't think very good. I mean, I'm looking at...
Because Izzo was 28-5 in 2000.
They made the tournament... Golly. NCAA tournament appearances. 99, 2000, 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, 08, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 21, 22, 24. So they were out in 23. They were out in 2018. Those were the only 2 years they missed the tournament since 1999. That's pretty sporty.
But I do think John's right, though. We don't, and with all the massive pillars of college basketball that have walked away in the last 2 to 3 to 4 years, like Izzo should have elevated to being a primary part of the discussion of best coach in the country, and not a lot of people put him there. He should be, deserves to be.
Probably.
And I think a lot of people just are looking for maybe the next guy or who they think is going to be, coming up pretty soon. But Izzo's kind of been there for a minute, been doing it for a while. So it's we'll see what kind of tournament run this team can make for Tom Izzo as they get a regular season Big Ten title with the win against Iowa last night. And that's a team that's pushing for a 1 seed as well, which means this last regular season weekend of college basketball is going to be massive. We've talked a lot about college basketball today. We'll flip to college football on the other side. Talk about defenses in the Southeastern Conference. Who do we think is going to have the best this fall? You can be a part of that conversation. 800-239-9569. 800-239 WJOX. If you want defense against the flu, which is still going around, plus pollen season right around the corner, make your home healthier with Trane's Clean Effects Home Air Cleaner. Removes up to 99.9% of airborne particles, including those that cause virus. 100 times more effective than standard air filters, 8 times more effective than HEPA room filters. Find a dealer near you at Trane.com. It's hard to stop a train. When we come back, what defense is not going to have a hard time stopping a lot of offenses in the Southeastern Conference? We'll discuss it right after this on Mac and Cube in the morning. 7:25, Friday, March the 7th. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Speaking of Michigan State, quickly before we move on to best SEC defenses and what they did last night, the 4 regular season outright Big Ten titles since Tom Izzo took over. That was 95-96. That's actually tied with Purdue for the most in that span. So we can say not more or that's it, but it is tied for the most. And there are 16 conference wins this season, ties for most in a season over the last 28 years, which gives you an idea, again, whoever has been the best team in the Big Ten, what they've done, and where Michigan State sort of is this year. So just some interesting facts on that Michigan State regular season and what they have pulled off. Looking ahead, and we'll get to the SEC schedules in just a moment, the S&P rankings out for schedule difficulty. We'll talk about that across the course of the show today. You want to talk SEC defenses, you can do it on the Higginbotham hotline, 800-239-9569 if you want to get in. You can also text in 205-834-9450, tweet in at Mac and Cube. Is there a school, a program, a defense, Greg, that sticks out to you immediately more than others when we ask the question, what defense is going to be the best this fall in the Southeastern Conference?
I'm struggling with it. I'm not going to lie. There is one that I would go with, and it's a little bit based off last year. I think when you talk about having stars, having guys that can take over the game, top-level talent, future NFL players, I think the obvious answer is the Texas Longhorns. You get beyond that, and it becomes a lot more choppy to figure out, all right, which side am I going to be on? How do I see this thing unfolding? That's where I struggle. Is I have a very difficult time figuring out how good all these teams are going to be and having an understanding of, well, yeah, this team has this type of ceiling, but there's also quite a few unknowns. So Texas is the number one right now on paper for me, but it's based on a bunch of aspects that are really uncomfortable to prognosticate at the moment.
Let's start out with what is comfortable. With this Texas defense, first and foremost. And I know where most people would go initially, and you couldn't really blame them. It would be Colin Simmons and Trey Moore. Trey Moore, the UTSA transfer, had a good year last year. Maybe not what we thought, but Colin Simmons had a much better year than we anticipated any freshman on the edge having in the Southeastern Conference. Continued to come on as the season progressed. But to me, I'd point to Anthony Hill Jr. as to just what kind of player he can be and the versatility that he brings. You need sideline to sideline, he can be that guy. You need thumper, set the tone, he can be that guy. You want to line him up off the edge, rush him, blitz him inside, he can be that guy. And he can be effective at all of those. I think that's where you start. And I can recall being at a Friday practice talking to Sark this fall. And we talked about Anthony Hill Jr. I said, man, I just feel like he's really picked it up, really kind of, and he's like, yeah, he said, guy's a prick, but in the best way possible. But he said, but we needed that. That was the main thing we needed on that side of the ball this year, and we're getting it from him. So that tone setter aspect, I don't think it's a secret, something that Texas as a team before Sark arrived for a while didn't really seem to have. And it's not a surprise that he wants to find sort of that edge, specifically on that side of the ball. And I think Anthony Hill would be the first reason I'd point to Texas's defense and say, yeah, they got a chance to be pretty good this year.
Well, I like Anthony Hill a lot. I think it's the edge guys that give me the most optimism. Their edge guys are the real deal, man. I think they are, at least. I mean, shoot. Colin Simmons could take over the game. Anthony Hill, when he slides down, he could take over the game. Ethan Burke, I think, is the motor that never stops. It's just constant and relentless. I think if you look at what they have off the ball, I like their personnel at linebacker. There's a couple unknowns there, but I think they're going to be all right in that spot. But there's some notable departures along the interior of the defensive line. That's not going to be easy to just rinse and repeat. They've been excellent there for 2 years now. So to think that group's got no drop-off whatsoever, that's a hard thing for me to forecast. I also look at the back end, and their best player in the back end was Jahdae Barron. Jahdae Barron's not going to be there as well, so that's going to be a big loss. I think Makuba was fine at safety, but at the same time, he wasn't a game changer.
He also missed some time.
He wasn't a difference maker. He was a fine player. He was a veteran. He was a good presence. He was a good leader, a good guy. but he's not a guy that I think is impossible to replace. So they do have some glue guys that they'll miss, but for the most part, man, the biggest concerns are certainly in the back end, more than likely, and probably up front at defensive tackle.
If you have concerns about arthritis or anxiety, not just for yourself, but for a pet in your household, your CBD store can help. Your CBD store, the largest brick-and-mortar CBD retailer on planet Earth, first company to have USDA-certified organic oil supplements that have the stamp seal on those products. So they're going to meet and achieve a certain set of standards. Your CBD store, we've had multiple pets in my household struggling to get around up and down the stairs. Products from your CBD store, the treats that they have for arthritis for the pets has been able to help them out and be a little bit more comfortable moving around the house. They can help yours. Anxiety as well. If the storms come in or when people knock on the door, they can help calm them down a little bit if the pets need that. Stop by one of their 3 locations today, Highway 280 by Bailey Brothers, 150 by the Cage in Cleaver. Trustful just off 459, your CBD store, where good health hits home. I think when you look back I think about the conversations we had this time a year ago, and we were concerned about the interior of that defense and 2 early draft picks that were going to be gone. Well, then here comes Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, who I thought had a very underrated season for that Texas defense. Bill Norton helped a great bit. Barron Sorrell moved down inside at times. They had good numbers for starters, but they had good players, guys who played well. They're going to have to do that again. And it'll be a couple transfers they'll probably lean on to see if they can come in and kind of make that difference. Cole Brevard comes in from Penn State and Purdue. He's a guy that I've studied some film on. I think he can be an SEC interior defensive lineman that kind of holds the point. As far as being active and disruptive, I don't know if he's really that kind of guy. I don't think that's what you're getting. Travis Shaw from North Carolina will try to be that guy. Maybe not as good at numbers as they had last year, but as you stated, with the edge defenders, the linebacking prowess, you still have experience on the back end. I think Michael Taft was better than a lot of people gave him credit for last year, and he'll be back, and he'll help that defense. And the other thing with Jahdae Barron, Craig, he changed positions from 2 years ago to last year. So there was going to be some alterations with it there, and maybe that means other people have had opportunities to do different things and they can fill in for him. So I'm with you. It's the one that probably sticks out more than some of the others as the easy answer to this could be the best defense that the league sees.
Could be. I think it's probable that it's the best defense, but I don't know. It's not without some hesitation. That's kind of where I'm at. It doesn't mean that it's not, that I don't feel good about him. I do. I do feel good about him. I like him quite a bit. I just also at the same time acknowledge that there might be some challenges. There might be some growing pains as they try to work some new pieces into the system. They've been so good at D-tackle, and at some point that group is going to fall off a little bit. It's law of averages. Over time, that group is not going to be as good as they've been the last 2 years. So that, I think if you get gashed up the middle, I'm worried. So D-tackle, you better be good. And if I'm building the defense, the most important position in my eyes is defensive tackle. I want to build it from the inside out, man. In this league, I think with how teams can run the ball, I think I want to build it with defensive tackle. And if I can get great corner play, that really frees me up. So if I can be great at D-tackle, great at corner, I feel great about where I could go. But those are 2 positions that I'm not 100% sold on for Texas going forward.
So let's look at some of the usual suspects next in the SEC that have had the best defense in the league over the last couple of years and might not, or might this year, right after this on Mac and Cube in the morning. Talking SEC defenses on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 7:37 a.m. right here on Jocks 94.5. You can listen online, jocksfm.com. The app is in your app store, iPhone, Android. Go download that for free. Watch live on YouTube every morning. Search Jocks 945. Some of the usual suspects that seemingly are there every year doesn't appear to have the same kind of confidence that they normally do. We'll start with the Georgia Bulldogs, a team that numerous times over the last 5-8 years has had the best defense in the SEC. And this just does not feel like one that many people are talking about at all, Greg, as at least being dominant, possibly best in the league with maybe a bit of a downward turn top to bottom of defenses in the SEC. But usually there is a braggadocious portion of the Georgia defense this time of year that people are excited about. This one seems to be lacking that a little bit.
I think it is big time. And it's kind of uncomfortable to not feel great about the Georgia Bulldogs. I don't care what anybody says, whether they're going to be as good as they were last year, whether they're going to take a step back. All that is possible, if not probable. Still doesn't make me feel real comfortable when saying, yep, not real sold on what Georgia's going to be. I think Georgia's pretty human this year. And I don't love that feeling, if I'm going to be honest. It just, I'm not sure that the personnel is what it's been. I'm not sure it's even close to what it's been. And I don't know when that's not going to be the case anytime soon. It feels like it's going to be that way for a while. So I don't know how you feel about it, man, but I am in wait and see mode with Georgia more so than I've probably ever been before.
Well, what's the scariest portion of it? I won't even say scary portion. What is the scariest part about this Georgia defense? Christian Miller's giving you some good reps. Xavier McLeod gave you nice reps towards the end of the season. I thought he did some really good things, but not things that we can't find a way to manage in game. I do think Raylan Wilson has the potential to be a guy that we talk about when the season's over of having that wow factor on the Georgia defense. It hasn't been consistent. He hasn't been sort of the guy for long enough yet to really be able to say that. KJ Bolden obviously has that ability. We've seen some of it. He's made some of those plays, did it early last year, late last year. But it doesn't seem like that dominant, overpowering, overbearing force at any portion of this defense that offenses are just not going to be able to manage or not going to be able to get away from.
It hasn't been that way for years.
Well, I mean, 2 years, I think it hasn't been that way.
Well, that's a long time. It's multiple years. I mean, they weren't that way last year. They weren't that way the year before. And I don't see the personnel that expects them to get back to being that force, that dominant piece. At least not this year. I mean, and look, are there freshmen that are good? Yeah, I love their youth. I think they got a lot of good young players that I'm real optimistic about. But I also know that maybe those guys aren't as good as the 2021 version. I think Georgia gets a pass more than anybody else in college football right now. And they do get the Bama treatment from yesteryear, which I think they've earned. But they get a pass more than most right now when it comes to, oh, they lost that guy, no problem. Well, I haven't seen the capable replacements that are just getting off the bus every year. Like they're nowhere near the teams that were winning championships in convincing fashion in 21 and 20. So in 21 and 22. So I don't know. Do you have that faith in Georgia every year to go and get the job done?
Every year I usually do, but I don't know if I have as much of it this year. I know this, that structurally they'll be pretty sound. I know that how they play will still probably be impressive. They're going to be a group that gets after you. And there are some numbers that we've seen a little bit of, like Jordan Hall's played some on that defensive line. We've seen Gabe Harris be kind of on the edge, didn't line up down closer inside, off the ball a little bit. Like he's going to bring the noise at least. I mean, if you want a guy that's going to bring the ruckus, Gabe Harris is a guy that can do that. I don't know if he has a real home on the defense, but at least you get somebody out there that's going to trade some paint. We know what C.J. Allen's capable of. We talked about Raylan Wilson, K.J. Bolden, Dalen Everett's played a lot of football. So there is confidence there for me still that they will play good football. Maybe it's not totally fair that we talk about Georgia in a completely different light and that we talk about them not as being good or great, but being dominant. And that's the comparison. Are they going to be dominant or not? Because if they're not dominant, most of us are going to look at them and say, yeah, it's just, it's not, they're fine, but they're not what we thought, or they're not what they expected, or not what we thought they could be. They're not necessarily living up to the hype of what maybe people would say what they should be. And we know how this works a lot of times based on the recruitment of a lot of the guys. Hey, they got X amount of 5 stars or 20 stars or whatever. Look at all the stars, but they're not necessarily what we thought they were going to be.
They're good. I mean, I'm not saying they're not good. It just doesn't. I think the unbeatable Georgia is gone. And I think they have improved at a few spots, but those that sit there and say, oh, well, their defense, it'll be the best in the league. What can you point to that leads you to think that? I don't have that same type, because CJ Wilson's back. I mean, he's a good player.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, he's not number one to me in college football at linebacker. This is not knocking Georgia. I had tons of respect and faith in Georgia and Kirby's ability to sustain success. This is not an indictment. This is purely about, why are they getting the benefit of the doubt this year? There's big question marks. I mean, goodness. You look at the pieces that were lost, the pieces they lost in the portal. There's some challenges that Kirby Smart has this year, more so than they've had in the past. And that doesn't necessarily mean they won't meet those challenges. They might very well meet and exceed those challenges. But I'm in see it to believe it mode right now with Georgia. And that's okay. I think I think they can get there, but I'm not willing to put them there just yet.
It is not just Georgia that we normally go into a college football season thinking that defense will be great. And that defense has a chance to be, or at least a lot of people thinking should be, dominant. There's another team that usually falls into that category. We'll discuss them in just a moment. But a store that we know is dominant is Bromberg's.
Bromberg's is a great place to go and purchase things that might be in your family for multiple generations. You'll understand what I'm talking about when you walk in the door. It's just amazing the service that you'll receive. It's amazing the selection that they have that's available to you. I go and get everything from there. It's amazing. I can go and get giftware. I can go and get jewelry. I can get watches, whatever it is you're looking for. Bromberg's has you covered. They're an authorized Rolex dealer. They have tons of beautiful, beautiful pieces that your loved ones will appreciate and that you can someday potentially hand them down to a son or daughter down the road. These are timeless pieces that you will be very, very happy to bring into your family. So go and see my very good friends in Bromberg's at the Mountain Brook Village store and at the Summit.
Alabama's defense, good, dominant, average, better, worse? We'll discuss it right after this on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Slowing it down for the final segment of hour number 1. Friday, March the 7th, 2025. Jocks 94.5. Talking college football defenses, specifically in the Southeastern Conference. Greg Skipper tweets in, who has the most complete team heading into spring practice in the SEC? I mean, off the top of my head, I'd probably stay with where we went for defense and say the Texas Longhorns. I'd have real questions about the offensive line. Some minor questions about the weapons, specifically tight end. Just not being what it was overall last year. The people all that say, oh, don't have a spring game. Look at the Texas running back situation. It worked out okay for them this year, even though they got a guy hurt in spring ball last year. But you know who your quarterback's going to be. That says a lot. I would probably have to go Texas right now, Greg.
I think Texas is probably the most complete. I also think there are question marks there. They're probably the most star power. I think naturally the media is going to gravitate a little more towards the star power, but there is major unknowns as it relates to Arch Manning. I think he's going to be great. I really believe that, but I don't know that. I don't know without a shadow of a doubt he's a Heisman contender. I don't know that. I think that we're putting a lot of faith in the last name. We're putting a lot of faith in the star rankings, and not as much faith in the tape that I watched of him performing last year in a starting role. He was fine. I wouldn't say he was great. You called one of his games, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe his first start. I can't even recall if it was his first start or not, but
it was.
You saw it. I mean, it was fine. It was good. I think he's going to be fine. I'm not worried about it. But I also don't know if he's going to be.
Well, listen, Stark told us straight up. I said, Coach, it looks like there's a couple times that he just thinks he can get it in there no matter what. And he said, yeah, we got to get out of that. He said, there are definitely times when things are ignored. And he said, listen, we love the belief. I love the confidence. He said, but there are some throws that shouldn't have been made. The game before, if it was, who was that? Not Tulane, UTSA maybe, La Monroe. He made a couple throws in that La Monroe game when you're like, oh, no. That's not it. No. You're not going to be able to do that in bigger games. And got away with them there. Not going to get away with them against other teams. So, yeah, there's questions involved in his game. It's young, of course, but
super young.
I'm trying to think who even would come into this mix. It's I have a lot of questions about the LSU defense. It would be great for us to say Whit Weeks, Harold Perkins, year 2 of Blake Baker, but what are your other mainstays that you feel really good about? South Carolina loses a ton. A&M loses a ton. Billy Lucci told us this week he thinks they're still going to be pretty good. We don't know what to make of Ole Miss right now. With what Missouri loses on offense, you can't go that direction. We talked about Georgia's defense, and now you're going to have a new quarterback. And some of what we thought was going to be really good or really solid with Georgia last year wasn't.
Yep.
So that working itself out. Tennessee loses all the receivers and the defensive linemen and the offensive linemen that they did. I cannot feel great about that. It's got to be Texas right now.
Probably. I mean, that'd be the direction I'd lean. I just don't know without a shadow of a doubt that it is bona fide lock. I don't know that.
Who's
I think
close?
I think it's likely. I think Bama's in the mix as far as complete. I just don't think they're very deep, which is always a concern. I think other complete units, man, it's tough, man. I think Georgia's going to be close, but there are some unknowns. I mean, everyone's got just so many unknowns. That's the tricky part. And I just have a hard time at this point seeing the turnover on the roster saying, yeah, there's no problems there. But as far as the teams that have the potential to elevate to that level, I think Bama, Georgia, and Texas are your top 3 right now. I think LSU's close, but there's too many question marks for me on defense, and there's big questions along the offensive line. I think they'll be all right.
I don't know if they can get to where you're talking about, but I do think a team that can make a pretty significant jump with how people perceive them defensively, and it might be a little bit more difficult because you'll have a new coordinator, but Florida with Tyreek Sapp, Caleb Banks, George Gums back up front, Grayson Howard back at linebacker, who actually had a really good year, and not a lot of people talk about how good of a year he had. A lot of experience back on the back end. That if you're just talking potential, maybe taking a big leap, I would throw them into the category of a real possibility. And let's keep in mind that offense is going to help that defense.
Yes.
Because they're not going to go throw the ball 57 times a game. So that's also a massive advantage that Georgia will have when you're talking about being a complete team is just style of play.
Probably. But I don't know, like how do you feel about Bama? Great. Got to stay healthy.
It's a lot.
Got to stay healthy.
It's a lot more of a maybe than it has been, and this is not fair because we talk about Alabama the same way we do Georgia. Like I'm used to seeing Reggie Ragland and Quinnen Williams and Mark Barron, and I'll ask you the same question that I asked about Georgia. Like, where are they most scary? And I will say this: LT Overton was a lot better than I imagined last year.
Yes.
James Smith, no one talks about, but I promise you, if you made an offensive lineman sit down in a film room and watch the last 3 games and said, who do you want to go against the least? They're probably going to come out saying 23. Now, he didn't play 50 snaps a game, but heavy-handed, a guy that you don't really want to tussle with. If Quay Russo's healthy all year, we loved him early last year. Loved him. But I think you saw when he went down and Q Robinson started getting banged up, there wasn't a lot left on the edges.
No.
And so that's a major point of concern. Deontay Lawson's incredible. We know that. We've been on him for years. We love his game. And if he and Justin Jefferson are both on the field, I think you're fine. You said it. Depth. It's hard to have confidence with what's next. And then probably say the same thing about, most of the secondary, like Sab, Brown. Those guys were good when we watched them last year. Bray Hubbard did some good things, but we don't know a lot about what's next. And maybe that's why I have a little bit of trepidation in saying they're going to be dominant or they're going to be great. I don't think they're going to be bad by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
But I probably have an unfair comp with them in my brain based on what we've seen the last 12 years plus.
No, I'm not comparing them at all to 2015-16 talent-wise. Not even close to that. But I look at the rest of the league, and I'm struggling to find the locks. I really am.
Yeah.
I'm struggling mightily to find those that are without question heading into the season. They all have them. It's just whose are worse than others and who has guys that outperform. I think Bama's got a real shot. I've not been shy about sharing this. I think Bama's got a chance to be really good. I mean, if Bama can get high-level quarterback play, which is possible, also potentially not possible. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see how Ty Simpson does. But if they can get high-level quarterback play and they can improve a little bit with their pass rush and the offensive line improves a little bit on the right side, I think you're looking at a possible national championship contender. I really believe that based on the question marks elsewhere.
It'll have to be a little bit of a different style team, I think, than we've seen the last few years, specifically on offense. And, of course, not having the quarterback mobility makes you a different style offense anyway. But that might be back in Ryan Grubb's wheelhouse more so than some imagine. More on SEC defense is next. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 8 a.m. Friday, March the 7th, right here on Jocks 94.5. Talking SEC defenses. You want to be a part of the show, 800-239-9569. You can. Let us know your thoughts on who you believe will have the best defense in the SEC this fall. We did mention Georgia last segment, excuse me. Not last weekend. We talked about it last weekend, too. But the Georgia Bulldogs, one that just don't feel as scary. Stephen Madrid tweets into the show at Mac and Q. I'm a dog fan. We have some serious question marks. There's some young studs coming in, but not the same depth on defense as 21-22 season. It's going to be interesting to see how solid unit actually is this year. The Unhipster tweeting in, I say this every year. Why does anyone give Ole Miss so much preseason love when they have never, ever backed it up? Ole Miss will not have the best defense statistically in the SEC in 25-26. Now, when you say 25-26, you're talking about basketball. Or are you getting way ahead of ourselves here and saying that
next year,
not just this fall, but you're going to go into the next
Doubling
fall.
Down? Wow.
Ole Miss won't have the best defense in the SEC.
I like that play.
Let me give you kind
Good
of the
forecast, considering they're the portal team of the year every year. Who's going to be on their team next year?
Well, that's kind of part of what I wanted to go to here, because I don't think Greg, myself, John, none of us have pushed any narrative that Ole Miss is going to have the best defense any year. Not even going into last year, none of us pushed that narrative. But if you're going to sit there and tell me that Ole Miss is never going to back anything up the last 4 or 5 years, I'll disagree with you there. Because here are your double-digit win seasons in the history of Ole Miss football. Last year, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 2015, 2003, 1971, 1962, 1960, 1959, 1955. That's it. So to say that they haven't backed anything up, I can't be on board with that. You can disagree with the takes or the tweets or the attitude or the demeanor, whatever. But Lane is doing more consistently at this program than has ever been done, ever.
Correct. Also, let's ask a question. Seriously. Better program. The last decade. Ole Miss or Auburn? I'll save you the time. Ole Miss by a mile, and it's not close. As far as consistency. They are. How many New Year's Six bowl games? I know they haven't won the SEC. How many New Year's Six bowl games?
Is it 3 in the last decade?
They've been to 4. 4. That's a lot. 40% of their games are in high level.
Where are we drawing the line in the last decade? That would be 14, the 14 season?
14.
So you're leaving
15.
out 13 now for Auburn. So yeah, in the last 10 years, if you draw the line at 2014, Ole Miss has been the better program.
Yes. And it's, by the way, it's not like a knock on Auburn. Ole Miss has been really freaking good. Like, I don't know why people want to continue to discredit a team that's been really flipping good for a while now. And Lane has taken it to the next level. They've been to Sugar Bowls. They've been to Peach Bowls. They've done a lot
Texas
of really
Bowls?
Texas Bowls.
Outback
I don't think
Bowls?
they played very well in that one.
I was there for that one.
I don't think they played very well in the Outback Bowl either. Or no, they did play
They
well
won
in the
that
Outback
game.
Bowl. Yeah.
It was
But
close.
there's been a handful of really high-level performances and good teams and big wins. So I think Ole Miss has proven, hey, man, we can play. We can go. We can do it. We've now proven to ourselves that if you build it, we can come, and people will come, and they will contribute to our collective, which is now highly competitive in the SEC. And that's pretty dang impressive.
Yeah. All right, so another tweet coming in from Stephen Madrid. Haven't heard a lot about Auburn. Do you guys think the Tigers' defensive unit or defensive unit will be solid this season? Greg and I have talked about it a little bit, and we were obviously going to hit it here discussing this topic today. It's one that the more I look at it, I do tend to get a little more on board than maybe I was at the very end of last season. I don't think you're going to have the numbers you had last year, and that's kind of going to be a similar conversation that we just had to Alabama. But I also don't think you're losing guys that are just irreplaceable. I think Eugene Asante is going to be missed. I think Jalen McLeod is going to be greatly missed because he did so many things, lined up so many places, and forced things to happen the defense's way. But I think DeMarcus Riddick has a chance to be a star. I think Keldrick Falk has real playmaking ability. Kieran Crawford can be sort of what Jalen McLeod was in different ways, maybe not every down, but on a lot of downs. And I think there are some youngsters that are sort of coming along. I think you're still going to need some transfers and youngsters to play a lot of snaps. You go back last year, and none of these guys were dominant, Greg, but Dorian Mousey played a lot. Austin Keys played a lot. Philip Bleedy played a lot. Isaiah Rakes played a lot. I mean, guys who had come in the previous two, Jaron Thompson played a lot. Guys who had come in just last year or the last 2 years, they took significant snaps and were not liabilities and sometimes made big plays. You got to find a couple of those guys this year. You just have to. It's not going to be just what was there that is returning that's going to be able to make this defense above average, and you got your coordinator back, and that always helps.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of reasons to believe their defense can be really good. Last year, their defense was really good. They just lack star power, and they lack the group that can really take it to the next level. Now, I know they got a possible top 15 pick, but I look at Auburn's personnel, and I felt like the sum was greater than each individual part last year. That's the way I viewed them all season long, and I thought it was really solid. I loved their defense because I think they played really well together. But I also kind of look at Auburn and I wonder, are they ever, with the personnel they currently have, are they ever going to be capable of knocking off I'm talking from the top spot of the defense, without more high-level possibilities and high-level first-round pick potential? Are they ever going to be able to close the gap with the Georgias of the world on defense? Because, look, I think Jalen McLeod's great. He's a great player, but an undersized defensive end, edge defender, it can only take you so far. Keldrick Falk looks the part. He looks like, a monster on the edge. But he's probably better on the hoof than he is as a productive piece. I don't know if you see it that way, but I don't know. I just think they need to maybe improve their recruiting profile a little bit so that they have some of those high-level guys.
Well, I'll say this. I feel better about DeMarcus Riddick and Keldrick Falk individually each turning into dominant forces on this defense this year than I did about any two going into last year.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, I thought Asante was a good player. He played hard. You liked watching him run around. Not afraid of contact. But Jalen McLeod was kind of, man, he's got some twitch off the edge. How's he going to hold up against the run? Like his app tape, but I just, we'll see. We'll see how it goes, how they're going to use him. But you didn't really expect everything that you got from him. And some of that, again, was the way that he was used. I mean, he was much more off the ball late than he was early. And I think that helped him find different ways to make plays. But those two feel like going into this year, yes, you are going to get big plays on a very consistent basis from those two. So that may put it a little bit more ahead of the curve for Auburn going into this year than we did last year. And we asked the same questions about depth last year. Isaiah Rakes, low center of gravity, good burst, good first step off the football, probably more a penetrator than hold the point guy, has done it occasionally. And a crowded defensive line room there at A&M, but we haven't seen a lot of it. Jason Jones, 9-foot wingspan, has the potential. Always been waiting to see the light turn on. Hasn't turned on yet. Bleedy, occasionally at Purdue, did some things, but doesn't look like a dominant force, Mousey did some good things at Duke. Like none of those guys we were talking about, okay, this is plug and play, dominate, make plays, make things happen right now. So I feel better about that portion of this defense going into the season than I did any portion of it really last year.
I think the defense is going to be rock solid. Really, really good. But the question is, can they be at the top of the SEC? And I don't know if I can put them there. I can put them in the top 5. I feel pretty confident in that, actually. But do you feel confident putting them in the top 1 or 2? I can't do that right now. No, because to have that for me, you're going to have to present at least a takeover guy. And I know I said that those two guys have a chance, but we haven't consistently seen them do it yet. Falk's been the closest, I would think.
Who are those dominant forces going to be? Not to mention, a lot of times an edge guy, we can avoid him. We have more ways to take you out of a game than we do a lot of other guys on the field. So is that going to be something that you can provide on the other side of the football with a Kieran Crawford? Don't really know. I do feel pretty confident that they have a chance to get into the top 5 defenses in the league. Much more confident this year than last. And some of that does have to do with who else have we been talking about? Bama, still a lot of question marks. Georgia, not near the confidence we usually have. Texas, for sure. But you also go back to some of the groups that were really good last year. Maybe some of this, too, with Auburn and with a couple other teams we'll talk about, is just the drop-off from a year ago. Ole Miss loses a ton. Tennessee loses a ton. LSU has some real question marks. Georgia, not near the same as they have been. A&M loses a great bit up front, which is going to make them very different. Oklahoma loses massive playmaking ability on that side of the ball. And are they going to have the offense even be able to cover it up anyway? We think that it's going to be a lot better, but we don't know. So I think some of what is aiding maybe saying Auburn, Florida could pop into the top 5 is just that some of the teams that were there, at least we thought were definitively going to be there last year, just doesn't look like they're going to be able to do that again.
Well, I know this. I mean, I think this year is a very tough year to pinpoint who's going to be top tier. I completely agree with you when it comes to Ole Miss. I think there's a huge drop-off there as far as what's known. I think there's a big drop-off at South Carolina. Everyone points to the one guy that's back, and Dylan Stewart, and I think he's a great player. But he was freed up a lot because of other guys on the roster that also gave opponents concerns. Like, you couldn't just double Dylan Stewart every time. Why? Because Kyle Kennard can get his, and you had 2 guys on the interior of the defensive line that could also get home, and you had some off-the-ball linebackers that are 25 years old. And you had maybe, one of the most freakish prospects at safety in the entire country in Eamon Worry. So, I mean, they had a big physical defense last year that was a problem at all 3 levels.
Yep.
So I think South Carolina drops off bad on that side of the ball. Doesn't mean they won't be good. Just doesn't mean they have a take over the defense game type of team that can hold everybody under 21 points. I just don't see it happening like that.
We'll talk a little bit more about that group. What could prevent them from taking that dive? Maybe reasons that we feel like they do. And then maybe another team or two, Ole Miss, we'll discuss on the other side. Can they be a group that sort of holds on, maybe finds a way to be better than they were a season ago? It's up for grabs in a lot of different ways, kind of like some of the real estate is in Central Alabama, and Gusty Gulas wants to help you get your hands on it. Even if you don't know where you want to go, he knows what's coming available because he's served over 3,000 home buyers and sellers in the greater Birmingham area. Gusty Gulas, brokered by eXp Realty since 2012, recognized both nationally and locally as Greater Birmingham, Alabama's #1 team in homes sold. If you would like to get rid of your home and want top dollar for it, Gusty Gulas Group can help. If you're looking for a new home and you don't see one available that you want, the inventory will be there at some point in time, and Gusty's going to know when it's coming. 205-542-1996, or go to GustyGulasGroup.com today and start packing. More SEC defensive chatter, teams that may move up, teams that may move down right after this on Mac and Cube in the morning.
Welcome back, McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Jock 94.5. Great day here. In the beginning of March, we got lots of things to look forward to this month. We have the start of spring practice that's gone on in several places. We also have March Madness that'll be getting underway. We have Alabama-Auburn on the hardwood tomorrow, and a bunch of other sports that are starting to get going. Softball and baseball underway. Just a lot of exciting things happening right now in the world of college sports. A lot of exciting things are also happening at Bill Smith Buick GMC. Everyone's chasing a championship in college athletics. Well, Bill Smith, they've already won their championship. They've gotten it taken care of again. It's 5 times in a row now. They've won the Dealer of the Year, according to GMC. When General Motors says you're the best, I take their word for it. That's why I'm a repeat customer. I know you will be too, because the deals that you'll find on the lot are off the charts good. You can go get a 2025 Buick Encore GX. This is a nice vehicle. Really, really nice. But the price point is unbeatable. $28,725 is the list price. They'll take $6,500 off the sticker. You'll get it for $22,225. And that is an unbelievable deal when you shop Bill Smith. You know they're the dealer of the year for a reason. The service department's amazing. They sell more vehicles than anyone, so go and take advantage of the savings by taking the short drive up to Coleman. You can also shop online, have it delivered right to your driveway at BillSmithBuickGPC.com.
All right, so we're talking SEC defenses, and Hamilton chimes in via Twitter at Mac and Q. Buddy of mine argued with me a couple nights. The girl that I say the incorrectly, like the. I asked him, how do you say it? He said, the. I heard it. I told him he sounded like he was reading Shakespeare. I'm pretty sure I just heard Cole pronounce it the same as me. As in the or the. Did I go Shakespeare or opposite of Shakespeare on the show?
To be or not to be?
What would the opposite of Shakespeare be? Like Larry the Cable Guy or what?
Wow.
I've never heard Shakespeare say anything. So
That's
I don't
true,
know.
right? Yeah.
So it's Jim Nance and Shakespeare under one umbrella.
Versus the
and
world.
Larry the Cable Guy
And Medea,
and everyone
I guess.
else normal under the other. Okay, gotcha.
I don't know.
I haven't given it much thought, if I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know which one's the fancier of the two. Simply just the.
I'm trying to think of where I went with that and how it was incorrect, but based on our conversation from yesterday, if you missed it, you can go get the podcast. I think we spent an hour and a half on words that you pronounce 2 different ways. I say the and the occasionally.
Like Megan Thee Stallion or?
Ooh. It's a good question.
Maybe it's not the, it's D's.
Wow. Got him.
Both do come out.
See ya.
Whew. That was a good one.
Got him.
Coach would have been proud.
Oh, well. Let's go back to SEC defenses and talk about not just the Auburn defense having a chance to move up or down. The South Carolina defense, one that may carry a lazy narrative into the season of just being good still. There are parts of it that you have confidence in. There are parts of it that are easy to like, starting with Dylan Stewart. And you have a couple other guys that you've seen on that defensive line get some reps, but not near as many as they're going to need. Like Monkel Goodwine has played. Brian Thomas Jr. has played. He's a little bit lighter out on the edge, not near as twitchy as some of the other defenders, but does play hard. Gives you some solid reps. And they'll have a couple of transfers coming in that maybe will be better than we imagined. The linebacking core is going to be missed. Debo Williams, great. Demetrius Knight, great. You mentioned the secondary players a little bit early. Nicky Minowari, awesome on the back end. O'Donnell Fortune, a lot of snaps. Now, you still have DQ Smith, Judge Collier played a lot, so that'll help. You do have some experience back there. And I'll say this, I don't think Clayton White gets enough credit for being a very good defensive coordinator. There are often times, Greg, that when you dive into his plan, it is much more complex than I think a lot of people realize. So I think it has a chance to hold on. It feels almost impossible to believe it's going to be better. Can it be as good? I think that's still doubtful, but there are portions of it that you look at and say, okay, it might not completely nosedive, but with no Kyle Kennard, no Tonka Hemingway, no TJ Sanders and company inside, you and I talked ad nauseum about what those three did in the middle of that defense last year. And it was different than what a lot of other people had. I can't see them being a top 5 defense this year. It's tough to imagine that.
No, probably not. I just think they lost too much. And it was a veteran. It's just the veterans. I mean, they're another one of the teams, and this has been my whole offseason study. Like, when I sit down and start grinding, I don't even hardly look at the tape this time of year anymore, because what I'm focused on almost exclusively, how old are your players? Because that right now is a real indicator of future success. It might not last forever because the COVID years are done for the most part. At least they're almost done. I mean, this might be the last year where you have guys that played during COVID that were granted an extra year of eligibility, and you have 25-year-olds playing college football. So you'll have some of that, but you don't have as much in the years moving forward. But if you look at the teams that have had surprising success, including South Carolina last year, and you and I both thought South Carolina would be good. We both thought they'd be a bowl team. I did not think they'd be on the fringe of the playoff conversation. But why were they on the fringe of the playoff conversation? 2 reasons. One, they had a ton of veteran players. A ton. And I'm talking from front to back defensively. They had 7, 8 guys that were 4th and 5th and 6th year players in some cases. That's a massive amount. Number 2, their schedule was manageable. That could come back around this year. Now, the schedule's still tough. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be a lot harder knowing that a lot of their personnel is pretty dang young relative to the group they had last year.
I think that's fair. And maybe I will say this, another portion of what Shane Beamer has done the last couple of years that he probably does not get enough credit for is the majority of his transfers they've overplayed their hand. I mean, think about the guys that they've had come in and be really good for them.
Yeah.
Joshua Simon at tight end. Nobody talked about him coming from Western Kentucky and said, "Oh, this now wait a minute. Now they got a guy that's going to be a big help to that offense." Nobody talked about him. Now Rocket Sanders we knew was going to help. You go get an Ivy League center 2 years ago and Gargiulo, and he plays really good football for you. Kyle Kennard. I mean, I'm texting Brent Key like, "Is this kid even good?" Like, I have no idea what this kid's capable of, and so. There weren't a lot of people talking about how great he was going to be. Like, yeah, okay, maybe he could be pretty good, but not dominant. So,
yeah,
they have overachieved with a lot of the transfers that they've brought in. So I will give them a little bit of the doubt there, Greg, because they have found a lot of diamonds in the rough, and I don't think he gets credit for that.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think there's a lot to be appreciative of with the evaluation, the scouting, and the way it's all worked out. But they also swung and missed badly at wide receiver last year. So for every good one they found, there's 2 or 3 that weren't great. So look, and that's part of the portal.
Yeah, nobody's batting 1,000.
Nobody's batting 1,000. So then until I see significant improvement at wide receiver, I think Rocket Sanders, great pickup last year, but was a proven commodity. Who's their back going to be this year? Is he going to be a guy? Difference maker? I know the guy they added, the portal kid, but I don't know how good he's going to be. I have no idea. So I think there's a lot of question marks. And to be honest with you, Lenora Sellers made magic happen a few times last year. It's tough to continue to rely on that magic. Doesn't mean they can't. Doesn't mean it won't potentially happen. Some guys just have that it. And him and Lagway both apparently, or based on how I've watched them, they seemingly have that it, but the next step is needed if they're going to progress as a player at the college level.
So a couple of others that we look at and say, can it be as good? Will it be close? Where will they finish defensively? Ole Miss was brought up a little bit earlier. And you look at a team that potentially could step in and find more magic in the portal. I don't want to say it was magic last year because a lot of those commodities were known. We had confidence in them. We didn't know how they'd all form together and how they were going to gel and how they were going to play. But, we had a pretty good idea that Walter Nolan had a ceiling. He just hadn't met it very often. We knew what Princely was capable of, and he was going to help. We knew Trey Amos could play. But could Pete Golding get all those guys to play together? And Pegues had flashed a lot. Chris Paul was a solidified, bona fide, solid of a linebacker as you were going to find. And he just needed to do it again in a different uniform, and he did. Now you got a couple more coming in. probably more on the back end than up front this year. Has Xavier Harris given you some good snaps? Yeah. Akilo Stone, better than I thought he was going to be. Perkins has been good up front. I'd say he's been excellent up front and probably should be in line for a big season. TJ Daugherty was a guy that played better than maybe some expected last year, but it doesn't feel like they have the ceiling from an individual standpoint across the board, Greg, that they did a year ago.
No, I don't even think it's close. Doesn't mean they can't potentially get there, but I don't think it's close.
So Ole Miss, a team that maybe could be falling back defensively. If that continues to happen, and we're talking about South Carolina going backwards, we're talking about Ole Miss going backwards, there are going to have to be teams that move ahead and potentially find a way to be there. There's one that has been good recently that we haven't talked about today that has a chance to maybe be there just based on some personnel alone. We'll discuss that group when we come back next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 8:31, Friday, March the 7th, right here on Jocks 94.5. Appreciate you being a part of the show. Auburn, Alabama in basketball, 1:30 tomorrow on ESPN as number 7 Alabama at 23-7 travels to number 1 Auburn. 27-3 on the year. You can hear that game right here on Jocks 94.5, John. Is that correct?
Yep, 1 o'clock.
All right, so there you go. Monday, we'll have Paul Feinbaum at 7:15, Richard Hendricks at 9 a.m., brought to you by Pizza Pulls on Fanatics Live. Paul, brought to you by Craneworks. To recap, Alabama and Auburn in basketball from over the weekend. We're talking SEC football defenses, though, and who will be good, who might not, who could be a little bit better. One that has been, I would say, solid most of the last few years with a little bit of ups and downs that has a chance, I think, Greg, to be pretty good this year that we haven't really talked much about would be Missouri. Now, 2 years ago, you had a secondary that tackled extremely well, got a lot of guys to the ground in a hurry. Wasn't necessarily the same last year as the year it was with Rakestraw and company, but you had Jalen Catalon, who, if he's healthy, and that is a massive if because it wasn't often at Arkansas and it wasn't often at Texas, but it was really good at UNLV last year.
How long has he been playing college football?
A while, but could be a big help.
Yeah.
Chris McClellan was good for them inside last year. Zion Young was good in and outside for them last year. But you lose Johnny Walker, who was disruptive. You lose Corey Flagg, who made some plays at linebacker. You got a couple of other transfers that you're going to have to rely on. But I will say this. A lot of people don't know who Marvin Burks is. If you want a tone setter at safety, and it might cost you some yards at times, because he is going to attempt to dislodge your helmet. Marvin Burks is that guy. Number one for Missouri is not afraid to play close to the line of scrimmage, and he is not afraid to – he's going to get his shots in. He is going to – his cuts are going to come. He's going to get his swings in. So you've got some prowess on this defense. Does that mean collectively it just comes together? I don't know. But Damon Wilson being added to this defense also, we've seen what he's capable of physically. Now, it's got to happen on a regular basis. But I guess where I'm going with this is if we're just going down looking for individuals who can make things happen, I think Missouri has more than people are discussing right now.
I would 100% agree. And I think Missouri, it's a little bit year two also, right? I mean, the year two bump that you're going to get with coaching continuity is helpful. Losing Blake Baker last year was not easy, and they had a lot of pieces to replace off last year's defense, man. I mean, like a lot of highly productive players. So I think they're going to be good on that side. I don't know if I'm going to go as far as to say that they're top of the SEC good, but I do think this could be an opportunistic group that forces a lot of mistakes. And if they can do that, then that automatically probably is going to make them a pretty legit group altogether.
I don't think there's any doubt. And what you said about staff continuity and kind of moving ahead that direction could be huge. Could be a massive reason maybe that Missouri becomes that team and has a chance to be that team. We did get a question into the show. Royal Payne, at Mac and Cube, could we see a trend of teams parking developmental players at JUCO with the idea of recreating the older COVID player because of the Diego ruling? 100% you could. Now, what's going to complicate that as opposed to the pre-transfer portal era when this happened is you now have agents involved and you have the ability to end up a lot of different places a lot faster. So I think also you have less, I don't want to say less kids out of high school going to be recruited, Greg, but there's going to be there's just going to be more emphasis on players not out of high school that can come help your team right now. Yeah. So there are a lot of people that believe that JUCO is going to turn into this developmental league where you don't lose years and that's where everybody's going to go park their talent. I think that sounds easier than it's going to be because I think there's a lot more people involved now and where they may end up.
Perhaps. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure I could even begin to guess as to whether or not that's a real thing. What I do know, though, is that guys are going to challenge their eligibility. This will happen. I don't know when. I don't know how soon. But I would be shocked if we don't see a handful of guys that start saying, hang on a second. Why do I only get to play 4 years? Why can't I play 7 years? I'm making good money in college football. Why can't I just stay in school? Like, what's the ruling that tells me I can't do that? Why am I not allowed? And by the way, I don't have a great answer for him. I don't know the answer. I'm not sure that there is a reason why they wouldn't be allowed or shouldn't be allowed. So that is a little bit tricky, but I think that's coming. And I think it might be coming sooner than later, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think how to project this out is it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to understand how the numbers are going to be moved around, how the numbers are going to fit in different places in different ways. And it might be different for different teams every year, just based on availability and who you thought you were going to get and you didn't get and who you need. I know all the coaches say that they want to continue to have their base being out of high school, other than Rick Pitino. But you know, we don't know how the numbers are going to play out moving forward. We have no idea. And how willing are better players going to be going to JUCO? And are academic standards still going to be beneficial at some other schools and some other conferences? I mean, we know who they are. There are a couple schools out there that can slide guys in. They've been doing it for years. The requirements to get in are just not what they are at other places. Are they going to? Will they benefit from this instead of a guy going to JUCO? Like, could we see a day, Greg, where big school says we're going to go ahead and give you an NIL deal to go to Blinn with the understanding that you're coming here next year? Is the NCAA ruling against that? I don't think they are. I don't think they have it in them to do it.
I don't think they would do it. No, I think that seems like something that could be certainly pulled off. Is it aggressive? Yeah.
Depends on how good the kid is, though.
But the kid also is probably going to sit there and say, hang on a second. Wait, why can't I just go and start making money now? Like, what's the holdup?
That's what I'm saying, though. Like, if McElroy Collective says, hey, go to Blinn, play for a year, get your grades where they need to be, then we can get you into school over here. But we're going to go ahead and give you X amount now out of our collective. Like, is there any law that says a collective can only pay kids that are enrolled at a certain school? No, because they're not tied to that school. So
no. Yeah.
Why can't, Say Bears Slingers go out there and pay Greg McElroy $50,000 this year to go play JUCO with the understanding that you're coming to play for us next year? Now, that can all happen, and then Greg can say, yeah, no, not going there. But thanks for paying me while I went and dominated JUCO ball.
Yeah,
but the other school's paying me more than you are, so I'm out. Goodbye.
Correct. And that's where it would go. It sounds good on paper, and theoretically, I think there's a lot of appeal to potentially going that route, especially if you're not where you need to be developmentally. But everybody that is going to be of a desirable product is going to be on campus.
Yeah,
they're not going to outsource those guys. And you run the risk of not controlling their development. Come on. Like, oh yeah, hey, Blinn's going to do a great job with you, better than we'll do with you here. Like, what we don't have the numbers now? Like, what? Like, I don't see that as like a realistic possibility. I'd be wild. I mean, I'd say it's totally out of the realm of possibility, but just feels unlikely to me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Not against it, by the way. Like, I'm all for the creativity that you just described. I don't know. These coaches and these schools like control too much. So to outsource a player's development feels tough. And every single player that's worried about NIL is not thinking about 4 years. They're thinking about 3. So if you're now sending them to JUCO for 1, then you're only going to have them for 2? Nah, come on.
Yeah.
That ain't happening.
All right. We will probably not have an answer to that for quite some time. And you know what? By the time we start to develop an answer, the rule probably changes again.
Probably.
And it has to be managed a totally different way. So it's hard to sort of put your finger on where the numbers game is going in college football. If there's a number you have in mind on what you want to spend on your flooring, you can probably spend less at Shannara Flooring.
Yeah, Shannara Flooring is going to give you a great price, and you're going to be able to finance it for 12 months with approved credit. What I love about working with Foo and their company is that they have Core Tech flooring in stock. It's 40,000 square feet that is in stock today. So for whatever reason you want floors installed today, I don't know if they have the time or the availability to do it, but theoretically they could do it because they keep 40,000 square feet right there in the great city of Birmingham. Shannara Flooring is my go-to, and I know that they're the only dealer to stock Core Tech flooring in our area. And if you're unfamiliar with Core-Tech, it's 100% waterproof, it's kid-proof, it's pet-proof. This is high-level flooring that brings value to your home or business. It's 100% waterproof, so you got kitchens, bathrooms, all those places that water could be on the floor. It'll be protected if you go with the Core-Tech flooring from Shaw. So call Foo today at 205-518-6423 or go online at fooandyou.com.
There are a couple of others that have been close and had good defenses the last few years. Will they stay there in the SEC? We'll discuss them right after this on Mac and Cube in the morning. SEC defenses coming up this fall. Who do we think are going to be viable, better, worse, dominant? Any dominant that you have confidence in right now. 800-239-9569, you want to get in. 800-239-WJOX. Kentucky has been a group, Greg, that has been solid under Mark Stoops many years in his tenure. Some based on personnel, scheme, style. Felt like it took more of a dip than it probably should last year. Now, Maxwell Harrison was kind of in and out of the lineup. You were dinged up a little bit up front, but we knew Deion Walker was coming back. You were adding an off-the-ball linebacker that looked like he was going to be somebody that could really kind of change the way you played there. Is there any expectation you have for the Wildcat defense coming up this fall?
No. With all due respect, I just don't know about the personnel. If that defense is going to succeed, you need some game wreckers up front because Brad White's not going to be a guy that has traditionally been overly aggressive with some of his pressure packages. Like, he gets home with 4, and you got to have some guys up front. Deion Walker's been there a long time, and they've had really good edge guys for a long time too. So it's not like you know for certain right now that they're going to be able to adequately replace this piece. Now, I think they have a couple. They lose a couple off-the-ball linebackers, too, that I thought were thumpers, man. They had some good players off the ball last year. And I liked Zion Childress, their safety. I thought he was great.
Yeah, he was.
So, I mean...
When Alex Safari had to come down and play linebacker, and he was pretty good there, but that was going to be different. You didn't know how it was going to go. And I just felt like with the personnel that was back, it had a chance to be really good last year with what you were adding, and it just kind of never happened. And that's it usually has happened under Brad White. He's been able to get that group to maybe play a little bit ahead of their skis.
Well, I think it is absolutely a possible. With their scheme, they're never going to be bad, right? They're always going to be a bend don't break team. It's going to be very situational. How do they play on third down? How do they play on the other downs and distances that would potentially be impactful? So red zone. I mean, they really are. I mean, they are the ultimate team in the SEC that is almost exclusively going to be built around third down and red zone. Because they're not going to be a group that forces the issue. They're not going to be like, all right, yeah, hey, we're going to blitz your tail off like LSU and basically force you into making mistakes. They're going to force you to be patient, to nickel and dime their way down the field, and then hopefully when they get in the red zone, they'll hold you to 3. How'd they pull the upset off last year against Ole Miss? How'd they do it? By letting Ole Miss get in the red zone and stopping them.
Yep.
And by forcing Ole Miss to be super patient. And by getting off the field on
them
third
be
down.
who they didn't want to be.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's how they win games. They make you feel uncomfortable. They make you feel patient. Go play the patient game. And not a lot of teams can do that nowadays. They want to just create big plays. And you're not going to be able to do a lot of that against them.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting watch. Just Kentucky and kind of schematically who they are, what they do, because you got a lot of transfers coming in up front. A lot of different guys that might come in and be great. You know, David Gusta comes in from Washington State, an active defensive lineman, which they have been able to find. And you do have Khalil Saunders has played good snaps. Josiah Hayes has played some good snaps. But you lose Deion Walker, you lose Oxendine, Rabipka inside, J.J. Weaver's gone, and then at linebacker, Dumas Johnson and Derek Jackson are both gone. You get Alex Safari back, and like we said, he played some good ball last year, but that's a lot of production along the front 7 that you've had for a while that's just flat not going to be back.
Well, there's a million guys that are gone, but there's also, I think there is the possibility of being able to replace those guys. I do. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think it can be done. I don't think it's easy. I think it can be done. And I don't know how you feel about them, but I kind of look at how they've been structured, and they've kind of had the same cast of characters for a while. Like, they haven't had turnover like this on defense in a while.
Right.
So it's a little bit up in the air just on that alone, because I feel like I've kind of been able to rely on them because I kind of knew what I was going to get because I kind of seen them play a lot of football.
Yeah.
And I don't have that luxury this year.
Totally fair. So Kentucky, a team that probably, and listen, they weren't exceptional or great last year, but seems doubtful that they will make a leap or be a whole lot better this year. Some of that personnel base, some of that just kind of what we've seen in the last couple of seasons. Is there a team we haven't discussed that you feel like has a chance to make a decent leap, even if they're not into the top 5 in the league defensively, but just has a chance to kind of be, I guess, a lot better than what people believe or are thinking right now that we haven't mentioned?
I mean, we haven't really talked about Florida.
Yeah, that was one that I said earlier that I thought had that possibility inside of them to maybe make that jump, not into the top 5, but to just be better than people thought.
I think they were pretty good last year. I mean, especially down the stretch. I mean, Caleb Banks kind of found out who he was. I mean, they're not going to be a group defensively where I watch them and I'm like, oh boy. I mean, they're not Florida of 2009 or 2008. But they're pretty sporty, and they bring back a few guys that I think can make life difficult for some. I mean, they bring back 65% of their production, according to the S&P Plus rankings, which is a pretty good place to start. And then Yeah, are some of the guys tough to replace? For sure. There are definitely a few, and they didn't have an outrageously disruptive group in general. But Caleb Banks was a guy whose light went on down the stretch. And if he can pick up where he left off, look out. I mean, he's a big problem on the interior. And to be honest with you, might be the most concerning D tackle in the league if he hits his ceiling. If he becomes as good as he can become, is he the best D tackle in the game right now in the SEC?
Ooh.
I'm telling you, I think it's possible. I know I'm not talking about an end that slides down on third down and creates disruption. I'm talking about a true hand in the defensive tackle.
He is, off the top of my head, probably the most active right now.
Good starting point. Good, solid adjective to use to describe a defensive tackle.
But I mean, there's a lot more I think that goes into being the overall best. I do think he kind of disappears at times.
He does.
I don't know. He doesn't feel like he loves to play the run as much as he loves to shoot gaps or rush the passer. But
I'm talking the Nick Fairley take over the game concerning can end the game in one play. Nick Fairley didn't like to do any of that stuff. It's pretty good in 2010, though, because he played 1 out of every 8 snaps, and that one that he played was dang good.
Yeah, if we're talking about guys, if we're just drafting here, saying, all right, who would you take first of guys that are capable of coming in and maybe being the most disruptive inside, he's on the list. There's another group that we haven't really mentioned much about at all, other than some of the bigger names that they lost, and we didn't even mention the names. I would possibly go to Oklahoma and say that a Jaden Jackson or Grayson Halton could be that guy. Now, keep in mind, they rotated a lot inside last year. And Jackson was a freshman that people thought could have a good year, but I think David Stone was the one that everybody was going nuts about coming in. And then Jackson ended up being super solid for him inside. I think he can kind of move. He's good at holding the point, striking and shedding at times. He would be one that I would throw into the mix also. But I feel like I know where you're going with this, and it's that we usually know 3 or 4. Like, it's usually, okay, Quinton Williams, Derek Brown, whoever else.
Yeah.
And then, we kind of know the top 3, 4, 5. Like, it's going to be Glenn Dorsey. It's going to be, whoever else. And, like, those are the guys. Like, Javon Kinlaw and Booger McFarland, whoever. Like, we know those guys. And this year it feels much more unknown as to who the dominant interior defensive linemen are going to be on a consistent basis.
So if I had to pick them right now, the ones that would be in my mix, just off the top of my head looking through my notes, Christian Miller at Georgia, number 52. All right, he's obviously a heck of a player. I really like him. I think he's a great player. I think you could go with I think you can make a case that, well, obviously Caleb Banks, I've already said how I feel about him. So that's, I think you could go to Ole Miss, and I could give you number 51. Looking up his name, Xavier Harris. He's a problem, huge problem. I think you could go and, look up at Jaden Jackson at Oklahoma, who does a good job. I think you could go and I think Oklahoma's got 2 or 3 that are kind of legit. Grayson Halton, you referenced. I mean, I think they got a few, but I'm telling you, there's not many crazy disruptive defensive tackles. And at or near the top is probably going to be some combination of Caleb Banks and a couple of these other guys, Christian Miller.
You do have Bryson Eason coming back at Tennessee. It's inside of him consistently. I don't know if it's anywhere where it needs to be, as potentially one of those guys. But it's even the guys that we've mentioned, none of them close to what we are normally talking about this time of year. And guys that are going to take over games, and guys are going to dominate games, and guys are going to come in. There's just nothing you can do about it. They're going to get their disruption in, and that's going to be that. I don't think there are any of those that we're used to seeing in the league coming in this year, at least that we know about right now. So. When we come back, talk about college basketball. Big game coming up in Auburn this weekend. We will begin to preview it next. Hour number 3 underway. Friday, March the 7th, right here on Jocks 94.5. Glad you're with us. 800-239-9569. 800-239-WJOX. A ton of college basketball coming up this weekend. It starts this morning at 11 a.m. on ESPN Plus with the Big South quarterfinals. And then college basketball runs all day today. Your last tip of the day is going to be at 10:30 tonight. That's Central Time tip, San Diego Loyola in the West Coast Conference Tournament. So if you are a college hoop fan and you want to park in front of the TV and just go all day, this is one of those days to do it because it is going to be wall to wall. And we'd also mentioned that UAB picks up a win yesterday against FAU, 89-80. So Andy Kennedy gets to 20-10. 9 college basketball teams in the state of Alabama over 20 wins at the moment. And Andy Kennedy, after that game, described what it took for UAB to go get that win against the Owls.
We allowed Memphis to shoot 60+% in the second half in your own building. You don't deserve to win. We allowed FAU in the first half to shoot 60+%. We did get it under that. They still shot 50, but we turned them over 15 times. That was the game. Our changing of defenses allowed us to get our hands on some balls and get out in the open floor and make some plays. We're plus 18 points off turnovers. We're plus 10 on second chance points, and we're plus 10 from the free throw line. That's how you win a quality basketball game, and we only had 3 turnovers. This group, 14 assists to 3 turnovers. Sharing is caring, and this group does move that basketball.
3 turnovers, just massive for UAB in that game last night, and got a nice win, and they'll be in action on Sunday. Tomorrow at 1:30 on ESPN, Alabama at Auburn. We've seen this game this year. We know the venue will be different. We have seen both teams struggle at times here in the last week and a half of the season, Greg. Just on the surface, what does Alabama have to do to find this win at Neville Arena tomorrow afternoon?
I think you can't turn the ball over, and then you got off to a good start. I mean, that's the key. They got to shoot it lights out, too. I mean, that goes without saying. And teams that have beaten Auburn this year, or at least given them problems, have shot the lights out. They got to continue to put pressure on Johni Broome. Johni Broome in the last couple games has looked really human. Relative to what he looked like in the first 30 games of the year, or however many they've played, he has not looked the same guy this year, or this last week and a half. So that, I think, is imperative. So it's a laundry list of things that must be done to pull off the upset. But I think there's an avenue. It's just going to require tremendous execution. But if you start turning the ball over, you start getting reckless, you start doing some of the things that have plagued this team throughout the second half of the season, like, you might as well just fold your tent, because you can't expect to win in an environment like that if you're turning the ball over. You can't expect to win in a hostile setting if you get off to a horrendous start. If you're in a hole 10-0 at Neville, the place will explode with energy and excitement. So I think a great start is number 1. 2, can't be careless with the basketball. You have to protect it at all costs. And 3, you got to shoot lights out. 4, you got to put a ton of pressure on Johni Broome. I think that's it. Those are the 4 things you must do.
Is there a player that you feel most important to help with that against Broome? Or is it got to be collective, in your opinion?
Collective, but I think Cliff Humawari is our best guy to be able to create some problems from a physicality standpoint. I mean, he's just a physical dude. So I think if he can be super physical, I think that's massive. So I think defensively, he might be the most important player in the game.
Yeah, it's you just think about what has happened with Williams and company, with Texas A&M, and then Kentucky neutralizing Broome just a little bit. Part of it, I think, him not looking 100% in that game against the Aggies on the road. How do you do that? And then the thing for Auburn has been the other players that have stepped up in different points in time over the course of the season. It didn't feel like that happened in College Station. It feels like there has always been one that at a critical moment or for longer stretches over the course of games has essentially said, I got it. We've seen Pettiford do it. We've seen Baker Mazar do it. We've seen Miles Kelly do it. We've seen multiple players. Chaney Johnson's been that guy. And if it's not going to be Broome and he is neutralized, somebody got to step up, and somebody's got to be the one that's going to be able to keep the offense rolling. And if that doesn't happen, that's where I think Auburn's in trouble. because I think they showed you at Kentucky that they can survive and thrive without Broome being his dominant self. And we haven't seen that the last 2 games, but somebody else has got to step up. And I'm not saying that you need Miles Kelly hitting 10 threes, but somebody consistently needs to be, and I think it can happen in waves. I mean, it could be Chaney Johnson for 5-6 possessions. It could be Baker Mazar for 3-4 possessions. But if it's not going to be Broome consistently, Greg, somebody else has got to step up and take that baton.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a bunch of guys that can do that. That's the tough thing about playing Auburn. Even if you neutralize Broome, you got to hope that the rest of the guys have a slightly off night. Unless you just can't miss like Florida did. And you better hope that some of the other guys are either in foul trouble or they're in a position where they, are taking bad shots or whatever the circumstances may be. So I think it can be done, but likelihood of being able to pull that off is pretty slim.
You may think that if there's a piece of furniture that you and your loved one, spouse, friends, neighbors can't move, that there's just a lost cause of being able to put it somewhere else in your house, but it can be done, Greg. Crocker Moving Services can come to your house and help with a single piece of furniture if you need that.
They're the best. Use them all the time. Always use Crocker Moving Services. Have used them several times in the last couple of weeks. They're just the best. Really appreciate the service that you receive from Crocker Moving Services. I've used them. They've been in my family, my family's home, multiple families, I might add. They've been in Cole's family's home. It's really great to know that Crocker Moving Services will have your back. These are good guys. You can trust them in your home because Eric Crocker, he's a Iraq War veteran, and he hires guys that you can trust. So highly recommend using Crocker Moving Services by going to crockermovingservices.com. That's crockermovingservices.com. Support your veterans by choosing Crocker Moving Services for your next move.
All right. So this game in Auburn tomorrow, I'm assuming the early start that you referenced, and there was a time, remember, for about 5 to 7 consecutive games that we talked about that being a major strength of this Auburn basketball team, getting off to good starts. Alabama game was one of those in which that happened. I'm assuming the crowd, a big reason that you say that specifically for this game is that you want to try and calm Neville Arena the best that you can, specifically early on.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's imperative. And it's going to be crazy anyways. So let's just be real. I mean, let's not get it twisted. I mean, it's going to be a tough environment to go into, regardless of the start that Bama gets off to. But I think if Auburn starts the way they've started the majority of the games they've played down the stretch, it goes from a 20% probability of winning to a 4% probability of winning if Auburn gets out to a huge lead like they have multiple times at home the last couple weeks.
All right, so we'll continue talking Auburn, Alabama on the hardwood. Your thoughts on it, who gets this game, why do they get this game, 800-239-9569. Another aspect, Greg, that you have to think is just massive is the health of Denver Jones. And is he going to be in there to sort of either neutralize, take away Mark Sears at certain times, like he did in Tuscaloosa? Felt like the game plan, specifically with Jones, was one of the more effective plans we've seen against Sears in his Alabama career. Not that he was shut down, but just neutralized to not taking over the game. Auburn going to have that because we know what Mark Sears is capable of in multiple ways. And you cannot allow him to take over via scoring or facilitating because there are too many scoring options. And if he's able to penetrate and dish, that's going to be a problem for just about any defense.
Very much so. And I think that's something they'll be watching really closely. I don't know how you see it, but I think Auburn's health in general is of enormous importance. Partly because not just Denver Jones, but Janai Broome. And then foul trouble. These guys at less than 100% is a big difference. So yeah, I think it's massive.
Well, we're going to see if Denver Jones available, if Denver Jones able to go and potentially have the same kind of success against Mark Sears that he did previously. There is another massive game, really two. They could turn into one right here in Birmingham this weekend. The Montevallo head basketball coach, Anthony Camara, is going to be a part of one of those games, maybe two of those games. We will discuss the Gulf South Conference tournament, semifinals, potentially finals, with two in-state teams competing, his being one. when we come back next right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Alabama and Auburn on the basketball court this weekend, number 1 versus number 7. Part of 9 in-state basketball teams collegiately with 20 or more wins this season, which is just beyond impressive, is what Coach Kennedy, who we heard from earlier, and UAB are doing. Bucky McMillan and Sanford and what they're doing. Obviously, Coach Pearl, Coach Oates, what UNA is doing this year. UAH dominant again. And Montevallo is at 20 wins as well. We'll speak with their head coach, Anthony Kamar, here in just a moment. First, I want to tell you about one thing that will not be debated during Auburn and Alabama's basketball game tomorrow, and that is who will offer their orthopedic care. It may be different surgeons for either school, but one thing that you know it's going to be from Andrews Sports Medicine, and that's because they're the best. And that's why Auburn and Alabama both are going to employ Andrews Sports Medicine to take care of their athletes if and when something does go wrong. Dr. Benton Emblem and Charles Pitts serve as Auburn's team physicians. They provide the highest quality sports medicine care in an effort to keep the Tigers student athletes safe, healthy, and competing at the highest level. If Andrews Sports Medicine is the choice for Auburn athletics in their basketball game this weekend, and Alabama in the same basketball game this weekend, there's no doubt they should be your family's number 1 choice for sports medicine and orthopedic care. Andrews Sports Medicine has 7 locations across central Alabama: Birmingham, Coleman, Gardendale, Hoover, Pelham, and Trussville. offering same-day, next-day appointments for acute sports injuries. Visit andrewsportsmedicine.com today to begin your journey of achieving victory over injury. How confident are you that Alabama can or will? I'm not asking you for a prediction now, GMAC, but can or will pull this upset tomorrow afternoon?
Level of 1 to 10, confidence level is about a 3.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, what do you want me to say? 8?
There are a lot of people that just think that, what this game means. A lot of people think Auburn's still kind of on cruise control after that win at Kentucky. That a lot of people look at it and think that Auburn thought that they handled all their business and they're set in stone moving forward, and that Alabama's got a chance to come take it because of that. So
I hope that's true. I mean, it's tough sledding, man. I mean, it's what's the line? And I'll tell you the predictability. I mean, I think that I'm probably closer to where the predictability is or what the likelihood is. It doesn't mean that it can't be done. It absolutely can be done. It's just going to require a level of performance from Alabama that we have not seen very often of late. If we see the Alabama that we saw against Mississippi State, action. You know what I mean? Let's go.
Okay.
If for whatever reason that doesn't happen, it's obviously going to get much more difficult for them to go into Auburn and Neville Arena and pull the upset.
All right, let's keep talking college basketball. Still in state, but we'll go to Montevallo. Anthony Camara, their head basketball coach, joining us now on the Higginbotham Hotline. Will be in the semifinals of the Gulf South Conference tournament tomorrow, which potentially could turn into a championship game against UAH. And, Coach, I'm not going to ask you to fast forward and preview that game, but it is very interesting considering your time at UAH, and it makes it even more interesting with an A-Cuff on your staff, who I know you coached with at UAH after Lenny just dominated so long there for the Chargers. How did that pave the way or help pave the way to where you are today?
Hey, first of all, I appreciate you guys having me on. This is I'm a big fan of the show, so this is really cool to get to talk some basketball with you guys. No, I mean that's a great question. I worked for Coach Acuff for 6 years at UAH. He was the first person to give me an opportunity in this business, and I mean, you guys know it doesn't matter what business you're in. You need somebody to believe in you and give you a shot. And he gave me a shot, and I everything I've done and where I am now, I owe a lot of it to him and him believing in me. And it's really cool now. Now his son, who I've known for forever, is on my staff, and he's done an unbelievable job. It's just really cool in this business how things intertwine and there's connections everywhere. And you're right. I do not want to look ahead, and I will not look ahead to Sunday because we have a job to do Saturday. But it could end up being a really, really cool storyline. And, on top of that, I was there, and I was a part of recruiting a lot of the guys that are still on that UAH roster. So there's a ton of connections there, and it's just it's a really cool situation. And, if it gets to that, I think it'll be a really cool day.
Yeah, it's amazing. First playoff win in how long? I mean, it's
10
wild.
years. It's been a long time.
A long time. Did you get the sense that this was coming? Did you get the sense that you were building to this, or have you now maybe arrived before you even anticipated this type of run?
So it's a great question. I came here 3 years ago, and this was the plan. You can't put a timeline on things like this because you don't know when it's going to work out. And at the end of the day, to do what we're doing, you got to have really good players. You got to have really good players, and you got to trust in their development too. And we've done that. Like we have good players that have really bought into what we're doing, and they've taken us where we are now. But we got here, and the first thing I wanted to do when we got here was establish the culture, because I talk about this, and every time I have a recruit and their parents sitting in my office, what we did at UAH and what Coach Acuff built there and what we did for all that time with all that success it wasn't built just by getting the most talent and throwing it together and seeing what happens. It was built by creating that culture first. And I know a lot of coaches use that, but it's something that I really believe in, and we really, really believe in here, of getting great people, great students that really care about their education, which in the state of college sports now, that's not as big of a deal as it used to be. You know, that culture part is the biggest thing. So establishing that first, I think that enables you to have this success as quickly as we have, because you don't have to worry about the other stuff. Like, I'm not dealing with a lot of stuff off the court because we have really, really, really good kids that take a lot of pride in our program, and they take a lot of pride in what we're doing, and they've completely bought into what we're building here. So, yeah, you use the word building. I think that's a great word, and it's something we've done for 3 years. And doing it this way is not always fast, and it's definitely not fast, and it's taken a little while. And we went through the trenches a little bit the first 2 years. I mean, it was really, really tough for a while, but there's no shortcuts to this thing, and that's the blueprint that I learned from Coach Acup, and I worked for Coach Schulman, who's at Central Arkansas now, and he's building there, and that's the only way I've learned. So it's the only way I know, and it's what we're going to keep doing.
Anthony Kamara, Montevallo head basketball coach, joining us on the Virus Rock Hotline. Maybe even cooler about your basketball team, Anthony. You guys went through the ringer this year a little bit.
Yes, we did. Yes, we
middle
did.
of the season, you had a little bit of a skid. You lose 5 of 6, but then all of a sudden, after that Nazarene game, you win 9 of your next 11. What happened? What light came on? Like, what did you do with the lineup to be able to sort of turn things around after a mid-January slide there?
Yeah, we did. And you guys know this as well as anybody. Like, these seasons, and I don't care what sport it is, football, basketball, it does not matter. Like, it's a long year. It's a long year. And when we met in August in our first meeting, we talked about, all right, this is going to be a long road. All right. All we want to do, our goal is to be playing our best basketball in March. So whatever we have to do to build to that, there's going to be times where it's not going to be great. We have to play our best basketball at the end of the year. And because those are the teams that go on runs like we're on right now. And you know, even before that slide in January, like we lost to an NAIA team at home by 20 in November, and that going into our Thanksgiving break. Yeah, you think that was a lot of fun? So, you know, that was really the first slide that we had to kind of band together. We're going into conference play, and we're like, all right, what are we going to do? You know, do you lay down or do you dig in and get better? And we got better. We won 6 in a row from there, and then we had that slide in January where we were not playing well, and we were not shooting the ball well. And it's a really hard game when the ball doesn't go in, but we kind of doubled down on, all right, if we're not going to shoot it well, we have to be the toughest team. I know that. We're going to have to defend. I know that. And we got to be even more perfect in our execution offensively. And we did that. We changed some things we were doing defensively which helped us. And we changed some things offensively, which really helped us. But the biggest thing was that our guys didn't quit. They stayed together. And there was never an ounce of blaming, finger pointing. It was like, all right, what are we going to do today to get better? And credit to our guys. They did that. And it's been a fun run these last 11 games. We've played well.
So now it's next up is the number 2 seed, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the best teams in the country in Valdosta State. I think you're playing that game tomorrow at 7:15, if that's the most up-to-date time. So look forward to that. Yep. But what will it take to get a win here at Sanford's Pete Hanna Center?
So we played Valdosta last week down there at their place, and we played really well. It was a must-win game for us to have a chance to get into the NCAA tournament. And for listeners that aren't familiar with the NCAA tournament at our level, it's 8 regions, so 8 spots in our region, and it's a lot like the high major level of Division I. There's at-large bids and there's 3 automatic bids for our region. So we were fighting to get in for an at-large bid, and beating them at their place really helped us do that. So we went down there last week. We played well. We beat them. and they had played 3 games that week. They were fatigued, and I going into this game, I told our team yesterday, if you think that you are not going to get their best shot, and you're not going to get a much better shot from them than we got last week, you are sorely mistaken. Like, we got to be ready for a war. So they play a really, really, really tough style of basketball to play against. They press the whole game. They trap. They play in transition. We're going to have to be really, really good. We're going to have to be on it. We're going to have to be sharp. We got to stop them in transition. We have to rebound the basketball, and we got to take care of the ball. If we do those 3 things, we'll have a chance at the end of the game. If we don't, it's going to be tough for us. And we're playing at 7:15 tomorrow night on the campus of Stanford. And if anybody in Birmingham doesn't have anything going on, it's going to be a great night of college basketball. It'll be a high-level game. It'll be a great one to come watch.
Absolutely. Anthony Camara, head coach of the Montevallo basketball program, joining us now on the Higginbotham Hotline. First time in the Gulf South semifinals since 2007. They've won 9 of their last 11. You mentioned scouting and scouting reports, and you mentioned that you recruited a lot of these guys that are on this UAH roster now. That could be a game ahead for you. But give us a scouting report on Chaney Johnson, who I know you also recruited to UAH, and he'll be competing against Alabama in an Auburn uniform tomorrow. Did you kind of see this coming when you saw that he was going to transfer to Auburn, and did you see this coming out of high school, I guess?
Okay, well, short answer, no. All right, so I went and saw Chaney at Thompson High School going in the fall before his senior season started, and he was 6'3.5". He was growing into his body, and he was kind of stumbled around out there. But I tell you what, he had unbelievable energy. Like, that's what, and I think Auburn fans are seeing this out of Chaney, and I think that's why they love him. Chaney he has unbelievable juice. And so we knew where he was, and we didn't really recruit him till the end of his senior year, and he had grown some, and he got way more explosive athletically. He had a great senior year, but he was only like 6'5" at the time. So we recruit him, and it came down to us in North Georgia. He had two Division II offers. He ended up coming to Huntsville, and then we brought him on campus. But when he got to campus, he was 6'7". It was like he grew like 3.5 inches that whole year. So if anybody, we had no idea he was an SEC player. We knew he had a chance to be really, really good for us. But the biggest thing with Chaney was, like, we knew that Chaney would help our program be better. We knew that Chaney would enhance our culture. Chaney is an unbelievable human. He has elite energy, like elite energy. And I can tell you this, no one will outwork that human. I mean, there were times where we had to dial him back. Like, he's in the gym. He would be outside my office at 8 a.m. every morning wanting to watch film on the practice the day before or the game the day before. And then he would be in the gym twice. Like, you talk about guys that love it. Like, that dude is crazy about it, almost to a fault. So seeing the success he's had now, there's no surprise here. There's no surprise here. He deserves every bit of it that he's gotten.
Well, it's cool to hear that story. Cool to hear how you recruited him, as well as a lot of the guys on that UAH roster who are in the other semifinal opposite of you. You guys there for the first time since 2007. It's been a heck of a turnaround, not only the program in general, but this season. And it's cool to see you guys where you are, Anthony. We appreciate you hopping on today, and definitely want to have you back soon.
Hey, thank you guys so much. I'm a huge fan of the show. I listen to it all the time, and you guys do an unbelievable job in our state and promoting what you're doing, and I just can't thank y'all enough. I appreciate the opportunity.
Listen, man, we got 9 college basketball teams, 20 or more wins, so our state's basketball state now. We got to learn how to talk about it. So
the state of Alabama,
learned what the 2-3 zone
really
was last week, so I feel really good about the progress we're making.
We'll get there.
And I only learned that because they let us out of the boxes at the YMCA and kindergarten hoops. So we're in a good spot. We're trending.
We'll make it. Anthony,
all
good
right,
luck this weekend.
Thanks,
man. Appreciate it.
All right, guys.
There you go. Anthony Camara, head coach of the Montevallo men's basketball program, which he is quickly turning around. They'll get the 2-seed Valdosta tomorrow night. That game at the Pete Hanna Center on Sanford's campus. Their first semifinal since 2007, as I mentioned. And on the other side of that, UAH at 28-1. They are in the semifinals of this tournament for the 7th consecutive year. And Coach Smith Hedgepeth has done a great job taking over for Lenny Acuff, who, by the way, when he was the head coach of the Chargers, won 8 regular season titles, 3 Gulf South Conference tournaments, was the 8-time Gulf South Conference Coach of the Year. And as we mentioned, his son Will is now on staff with Anthony, and those who have a chance to meet Sunday at 3 o'clock in the Gulf South Conference Championship game. How cool would that be to have 2 teams from the state of Alabama at Sanford playing in that championship game? So if that happens, either way, we'll talk about it on Monday, kind of recap it. But it's just good to see basketball at all levels here in the state of Alabama having a lot of success. And we're going to continue talking about it. And they continue having the success. Obviously, something that we're going to have to – you're not going to have to wait to hear us talk about basketball because there's so many teams that are good. We have to get to it. And you don't have to wait for your dental care either, Greg.
No, you don't. That's because Family Dental has you taken care of. The urgent care office where you can be seen the same day. And several locations to make it easy on you. They just added their 5th location right there in Trussville. It is terrific. Highly recommend you go and check them out. You can get a free teeth whitening from just a routine appointment. You also do emergencies. They can get you taken care of there. God forbid something goes on there. They can get you in. They can get you on Fridays and Saturdays as well. Most insurance plans are accepted. Go and check them out in Hoover, Fulton Hill, Homewood, Alabaster, now open in Trussville. You can call them today at 874-9605. That's Family Dental, 874-9605.
All right, when we come back, a little bit more, not only on college basketball around the state, but a very interesting move for an in-state football program. We'll discuss that right after this on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning.
It's McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. It's Jocks 94.5. It's Friday, March 7th. And as much as Cole loves to just acknowledge what's coming up tomorrow, you already know what it is. It's the Iron Bowl of basketball, part 2. It grinds his gears a bit, but we lean into it here. Why wouldn't we? When setting up what should be an incredible game tomorrow. It'd be awesome. It's always great to go into the jungle. It's always great to go into a hostile environment. Auburn succeeded in Coleman earlier this year in the first ever 1-versus-2 game between SEC opponents. But now Alabama gets the opportunity to return the favor. Should be amazing tomorrow.
I think it's going to be a great environment, and that's what I think Auburn and Bruce Pearl need to lean on. I don't know the exact status of Denver Jones. I do think that's going to be massive because Mark Sears cannot just take over a game and have his way. If he does, we know this is going to be too much to manage. It's going to be too much to deal with. Janai Broom's got to be better, and I don't think he needs to be 20 and 15. I don't think he needs to be the only scoring option, but I do think he breaks defenses down. And I think that is when we talk about some of the other players that at different times have shown up, done different things, be it Baker Mazzara, Pettiford, whoever that is. I think he breaks defenses down enough to where they're allowed to have those moments. Not Miles Kelly. He'll shoot from anywhere at any time. I don't think it matters what a defense is doing. He's not afraid to put a shot up. But like you said, that early start, could it, will it, would it neutralize that Auburn crowd? It's not often that place gets quiet. So, but I do think that's a critical part of how Alabama finds some success. Speaking of Auburn, though, not games in Auburn, there has been a change to the Auburn football schedule, G-Mac, and it's one that I think is really interesting. And I think when people begin to look into it and kind of see where it's all going to fall out, Auburn-Baylor is going to move to August 29th, Friday night. And it might throw some people off. It might not be advantageous for some. But based on where everything is, I think it's a brilliant move. I think it's a genius move. And I think it's one that makes this game more polarizing. I think it makes it more attractive. And it's going to get a lot more eyeballs than it was going to get anywhere on Saturday, in my opinion.
Yes, I would agree. I think it's going to be great. And hopefully you'll get tons of eyeballs and tons of promotion leading into it.
You have 15 games on Thursday, the 28th. You have 4 on Saturday, August 23rd. Auburn-Baylor will be going up against Kennesaw State, Wake, Wagner, Kansas.
Whoa, hang on. Don't get in the way of that one.
Well, it's, we do have Robbie Ashford in that game.
Oh, don't you start.
We do. He might start for Wake.
Don't you start.
I was saying he's there. Wagner at Kansas, App State, first game under a new regime, at Charlotte. They take a little short trip down the road there to Bank of America Stadium. And then Tarleton State at Army. So that's your competition right now on Friday the 29th. I think it's a great way to get a big window. You're not going to have to go up against, say, an Alabama, Florida State, or an LSU, Kentucky, or Tennessee, Syracuse, which are all games that are going to be on Saturday. Utah, UCLA. You're not going to have to really fight much at all. I mean, you're all of a sudden the game, Greg, on Friday night, early in the college football season when a lot of people are going to be clamoring for big matchups.
Yeah, I think it's a great spot. Remember last year? What was it? Colorado, North Dakota State. Remember that one. But remember last year, like how into it we were for not just that one, but also for Minnesota, North Carolina.
Yeah, just give us one.
Comparable. I'm not saying it needs to be the greatest matchup of all time, but that one moves the needle. At least it does for me.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, it's probably going to move the needle for a bunch of folks. I mean,
and on top of that, Greg, you've tried to warn people. We both have tried to warn people. Don't just think that this is an Auburn win by any stretch of the imagination. This Baylor team is going to they're going to offer difficulties at multiple spots. I mean, as of right now, Auburn's a 1.5 favorite in Waco. So it should be a competitive game as well.
I think Baylor's really good. So I think Auburn needs to be super careful. Doesn't mean that they need to spend their entire offseason prepping for this game. No, I don't think I'd necessarily recommend that, but I would 100% be very careful when taking into account just how good this team may be. They have the best quarterback in the Big 12. So if there's nothing else, know that.
It's I think it's a great window. It's a great opportunity for Hugh Freeze, the Auburn program, to get a stage and a window that you were not going to get on Saturday, and then potentially to gain some real traction, motivation, and maybe just good publicity if you can find a way to get that on the road at Baylor, which I think will end up being a good team in the Big 12 no matter what happens in this game. As you said, quarterback position going to be strong. I think they have a chance to be competitive in the Big 12 this year, so that could be one that if Auburn can find a way to get it, we're looking back week 9, 10, 11, 12 saying, don't forget about that Baylor win now, man. That was a nice one. And could put some real credibility into this upcoming Auburn team's pocket.
Good. And I think it's one that if you get it, it might not feel like much at the moment, but as time goes along, that could be a win that improved. Now, the good news is you lose it, your season's not over.
No.
Because I do think that's a team that's going to win a lot of games, and you're going to look back maybe at the beginning. The only problem is, man, the reaction will be way too strong. There's not enough people listening to our show right now that are going to say, oh, man, Baylor is the real deal. There's going to be people that say, oh, God, Baylor, they lost to Baylor. Hugh Freeze is done. You know what I mean? There's going to be way too much reaction to that as opposed to acknowledging the possible progress that Baylor's made from last year to this year and the possibility of them being a real contender in the Big 12. And then by the time that Baylor wins enough games where people are starting to respect them, Auburn has already suffered too much at the hands of the early defeat. So that's the one downside of this one. I think it's a must-win. I really believe that because of just the perception of the program and the commitment that's been made this offseason and the progress that really needs to be made overall here in 2025.
Absolutely. Well, it'll be a fun one to watch either way, and I'm glad we get it on that window because now you're not going to have to be flipping around from 4 or 5 different games that may also be attractive that you want to watch in a similar window to what Auburn's going to be playing. It's a good move, and I know both programs were pushing for it, so you don't give all the credit to one side, and it's good to see 2 bigger programs come together and say, hey, let's push the egos here thinking we're the game to watch on Saturday with 100 other games and go get this window to ourselves, and everyone's going to want to watch it. So
right.
It'll be good for both programs. It'll be good for college football in general.
Also, it's going to get a ton of promotion. Like that Thursday game, because there's such a desperate desire to get off to a good start from a broadcasting standpoint. I think it's going to get a ton of promotion. And last year, the Colorado North Dakota State game got a ton of promotion, a ton. And then conversely, on the other side, a ton of promotion was had with North Carolina and Minnesota. Ton of promotion for those games because you want to start the weekend out with the bang. You want to create some momentum going into the first weekend of the season. So I think you're going to get tons of promotion on Monday, Tuesday of that game that if it were on Saturday, it'd be lost in the shuffle.
Absolutely. All right. One thing that you don't want to be lost in the shuffle is your health. And if you are lacking sleep, you lack energy, you're just not feeling yourself. Game Day Men's Health wants to help you. What if you put on a few pounds over the holidays and you're struggling to get those off? Game Day Men's Health can help you there also. Some of those could be the effects of low testosterone. Here's what they're going to do for you. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. Sign up for a free consultation, no charge. And when you get that consultation, you get a free PSA test, you get a free testosterone test to find out your baseline health. Then Game Day Men's Health can present options of what they can do for you to hopefully help you feel better. Save 10% on any of those services when you walk in the door and mention Cube right off the bat. Also, keep in mind, when those services begin, minimal upfront cost for those programs that they offer. That's very different than other places in town. They're not going to ask you to pay 4 figures just to get started at Game Day Men's Health like some other folks may. Weight loss programs, the peptides are in stock now. Holistic approach to health and wellness at Game Day Men's Health. Just go sign up for that free consultation and ask them, what can you do for me? Can you help me feel better? If it's not anything, they're going to tell you that. They're not going to try to pressure you to anything that you don't want, don't need. Just go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com today. Sign up for that free consultation and tell them you heard about them right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. It has not been canceled by listeners yet. Bad Box Score of the Day is back. One more day at least. And then we'll give you our final predictions for Alabama at Auburn in basketball tomorrow, next on Mac and Cube in the morning. You belong to the city. Basketball, because you've taken over the entire state of Alabama. And a lot of it happening here in Birmingham. We mentioned Gulf South Conference tournament at Sanford, UAB at home on Sunday. You'll be able to get all of that. Which one of those qualifies, though, as our Super Sofa game of the week? We bring it to you each and every week. If there was one game that you could watch this weekend amongst all of them, which one would it be? And we're going to remove Alabama and Auburn in basketball 1:30 on ESPN because I think we'll all be dialed into that one. We also will not reference it as anything else. So without that one on the table, G-Mac, where do you go for your TD's Fine Furniture Super Sofa game of the weekend?
There's just so many options. It's almost just too difficult to pick.
What do you have, TGL tonight? Is that it?
No, it's
Who's
close.
going at
That's
it? The Aces and the Redwoods?
Yeah, no, that's Monday, Tuesday. I would never want anything to get in the way of TGL. That kind of goes without saying.
Were they to Genesis this weekend?
Somewhere like that. Florida Swing, in that vicinity, right around there. So pretty excited about some of the hoops going on this weekend. I am especially looking forward to, though, more than anything else, I really like conference championships and mid-major conference championships. We have a bunch of them coming up on Sunday. I'm going to go at 11 a.m., the Big South champion between TBD and TBD. From Freedom Hall in Tennessee, it's Johnson City. Don't care who's playing, but I do like the Big South.
TBD
it's on
played
ESPN
nobody.
Too. TBD played nobody. They
Yeah,
had
but
not
TBDs
played.
do, though.
Yes, TDs sponsors this segment of TBD versus TBD. It's 11 o'clock on ESPN2. It's the Big South Championship from Johnson City, Tennessee.
Going to be tough to beat 1 versus 7 with maybe not as much on the line from a seeding perspective, but you look across where the rest of men's basketball is going to be and who's sort of jockeying for position, who sort of needs it the most. I'll go with Kentucky at Missouri. Missouri seems to be slipping here recently, and a team that has often been carried on Mark Mitchell's back. If he doesn't seem to be scoring 30, they don't seem to be the same team. Kentucky kind of found some new life here during the week. Where are they going to end up? I think a big game from a seeding perspective from both, and that'll be my TD's Super Sofa game of the weekend.
Well, I'm actually going to another rivalry game in the SEC happening this weekend. How about the Red River Shootout?
It's not that.
It is.
Isn't.
The basketball edition, Oklahoma.
I do feel like
Texas.
you should be able to shoot that, not say that, not get in trouble for it.
Exactly. It's the actual shootout. It's the actual shootout. Oklahoma at Texas. And pretty much, if you win, you could probably find your way into the NCAA tournament. That game at 7 p.m. on the SEC Network. And that's my TD's Fine Furniture Super Sofa game of the weekend.
And for me, I'm going to look at. I'm going to go with the Big East. St. John's taking on Marquette. St. John's 26-4. That game 11 o'clock on Fox on Saturday. St. John's probably won't get a 1 seed, but they keep on winning and run their way through that tournament. They very well could find their way, maybe kind of squeaking in, depending on what else plays out. I don't think they get it. I think they get it too, but I do think this would be a fun and exciting game. You got two teams that are, I think, they 26 and 22 wins. You haven't seen that with St. John's team in quite some time. And Rick Pitino, I think, was on Fallon either tonight or tomorrow. So, he's going to be excited to be back in his stomping grounds. Wow. But that's my TD's Fine Furniture Super Sofa game of the weekend. And don't forget, TD's President's Day sale has been extended. Only a few more days left, so find markdowns throughout the store. They have 100,000 square feet of beautiful furniture ready to take home. Plus, get 12 months, no interest financing at TD's Fine Furniture in Summerton.
All right, there you go. But I think obviously the one that is everybody's Super Sofa game of the weekend is 1:30 ESPN. Number 7 Alabama at number 1 Auburn. Greg, ultimately, how do you see this game going?
I mean, I'm not taking the Tide. I mean, I'm going to take them and hope that I'm right. If I'm wrong, then so be it. I shot my shot. We gave it all we had. So I think it's going to be tough sledding. No denying that. I'm not sure it takes a genius to put that together. It's going to be a really, really hard game to win, but I do think it can be won. It's just going to require tremendous performance on both ends of the court.
Damian, what direction are you going with this matchup?
I'm leaning Auburn at home. I think they'll get right game with Texas A&M, and I think they're going to be out for blood and just to show that they still run the state in basketball. So I'm taking Auburn.
Yeah, at home it's tough to go against Auburn being there. John, how do you see this one playing out?
I think Alabama gets it. As much as we said, it's just tough to win on the road. Auburn's actually played better on the road than at home. And I do think as much as Auburn wants to get right, Alabama wants to get right even more. I think the Tide gets it. Get it.
You think the Tide wins?
Yeah.
Let's go.
I'll take Auburn to win at home.
Gosh,
Neville Arena. I don't think Janai Broom's going to want to have 3 straight games where he's sort of off his game, so to speak. I just don't think that's going to take place. So I'll take Auburn to get the win at home. I think Broom has a better game, but there will be a subsequent scorer that steps up at multiple times and has a big game. Just don't know exactly who that's going to be yet. Is there a key player offensively for Alabama? Is it just Mark Sears, or is it someone opposite Sears, Greg, that you feel like has to be big?
Gosh, Grant Nelson's such an easy pick. I feel like he has not played up to the standard that I've come to expect from him these last few weeks. Like, I think it's still in there. I think he could do it. Any one given game, he could go off, but it just hasn't really materialized. So I'll go with him. I'm cautiously optimistic that he can find that game at the end.
Okay. Anybody else have an individual player that has not been mentioned? John, Damian, that you feel like going to be huge in this matchup?
See if Miles Kelly can keep it going. He'd be the one.
If you get close to what he got against Kentucky, it's not going to
buddy.
matter what anybody else is doing, I don't think. And if you're banking threes in from opposite wings back to back, it's just probably doesn't matter what anybody even tries to do. So you'll be good.
I'd throw out Phylon.
Okay. You think he decides it?
No, but I think I think Mark Sears goes off, but I think Phylon puts up enough to where, okay, yeah, that was the other person that was able to push the Tide over the edge.
All right, a couple bad box scores quickly. Lubbock Christian took down West Texas A&M 55-34. West Texas A&M shot 13 of 54 from the floor, 2 of 13 from 3, 6 of 13 from free throw. They only turned it over 23 times. Pittsburgh State in JUCO basketball knocked off Missouri Southern State line 89-46. They were 19 of 63, Missouri Southern State was, for the game, with just 12 offensive rebounds, 2 of 14 from behind the three-point line. The rebounding differential 44-30. And the Mesa Community College Thunderbirds knocked off the Phoenix College Bears 69-34 with a rebounding differential of 57-27.